Roughly 68% of women have faked an orgasm, but apparently according to new studies, 31% of men fake orgasms. If you've slept with 3 guys, then the chances are a guy has actually faked an orgasm with you. Why the hell would a guy fake an orgasm? And then how do we actually tell that he's faking it?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions because we think men always want to have sex, men are always going to orgasm, they're always having pleasure, but it's not actually true. And so, the studies will vary from 1/3 of men to 1/4 of men have faked an orgasm at some point. Now, they're not faking every orgasm, but ultimately, men fake it for a whole variety of reasons, right? One, there's a small subset of men, like around 10% or less, that have delayed ejaculation. So it may take them a really long time, like over 30 minutes to achieve climax. And so they get frustrated and they just want to finish, right? And they just want to be done with the encounter because they're also starting to lose enjoyment in the experience because they're getting frustrated by the fact that orgasm is not coming. Now, a bunch of men will have issues, right? They'll be like, oh man, I feel myself maybe losing the erection, or I drank too much, or I'm on certain medications that make it difficult for me to climax. And so they will, to not make their partner feel bad, just like women do, right? Fake an orgasm because they don't want their partner to feel like they're not pleased. They're of course enjoying the encounter, but they're having some issue, whether it could be they have true erectile dysfunction or some other issue that's causing them to have difficulty achieving climax. And it doesn't mean they don't like you. It doesn't mean that they are not into the encounter. It just means that at that moment in time, they just couldn't perform like they wanted to. And I hate the word performance because, it makes it seem like men have to put on this show. And I think it adds a lot of stress for them. But really that's what it is for a lot of men, is they feel this stress, like they're about to go on stage, or like they're about to perform. And so it can be very stressful. And so they will sometimes fake it. Now, to answer your second part, in terms of how can you tell? Well, not all orgasms will lead to ejaculation. So there are 2 separate entities, and sometimes people can orgasm without ejaculation, or they can have an issue where their ejaculation is not coming out. A lot of diabetic men who've had prostate surgery will have retrograde ejaculation, meaning that the ejaculate will actually go upwards into the bladder.
What?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, instead of going outwards.
Oh, God.
So yeah, it can absolutely happen that way. And that, again, doesn't mean they're not orgasming. It just means that they didn't ejaculate. So those things aside, what typically happens that we know consistently happens with orgasm is that your pelvic muscles will contract. At a rate of about 0.8 seconds, you'll have a pelvic floor contraction. So sometimes you'll feel that. Now, not always. You kind of know when you've had intercourse and you feel that sort of movement in your own vagina, right? You feel those contractions. So men are having them too. And so that's really the only surefire way, because that's involuntary, meaning you can't control it. It's going to happen when you orgasm, whether you want to or not. I think really the problem with society in general around the world is that we don't talk about sex, right? We don't talk about sex growing up. You don't have these conversations with your parents unless you're in a very progressive household. And then when you get in a relationship with someone, you don't talk about your insecurities with sex. We all have insecurities. There's not a single person out there who doesn't feel insecure when they're having sex, at least for the first time, right? Because you're extremely vulnerable. To have good sex, you have to be 100% vulnerable. And so you have to be able to talk about the things that make you nervous or anxious or stressed out, because otherwise they're not going to let you enjoy fully the sexual encounter. And that's the real problem, is that we don't talk about sex. We never talk to our partners about sex. So how can we know what they're going through? We've never talked about it, right? And so we're all in our own head, oh, I feel this way. Maybe this isn't right for me, or maybe something's wrong with me, but maybe your partner's going through something and they don't feel comfortable talking about it with you. So opening that dialogue can really overall make for better sex.
And that's why I actually love so much what you're doing, because you're bringing up things that people aren't talking about, but you're also bringing up things that no one has ever heard of before. But there's a new study that came out, I don't know if you've heard about this, where it's actually, I'm going to read it to you, women, if they wear socks, are more likely to orgasm. And so according to a Dutch study, while measuring orgasms, they found that many of their female participants were uncomfortable due to cold feet. After they gave them socks, the percentage of those reaching orgasm went from 50% to 80% of women started to orgasm.
Yes, so that study I've heard too. And it makes sense, right? If you're comfortable, like if the temperature in the room is good and you're not thinking about how cold you feel, you're more likely to orgasm. And the same thing for men, right? I think in general, like men may wear socks if they're feeling cold, or it also helps them feel, it also helps, you know, you're not focusing the blood flow on the colder extremities, right? So it allows you to shunt more blood flow to the genitals and areas that need it. And so ultimately keeping the temperature in the room is important, right? And whether that's wearing socks or not, like who cares? Like don't think about it. Like what you should be thinking about is the pleasure, not if your partner's wearing socks.
Yeah, but that's what I found so fascinating, right? Is that you may just like visually go, oh my God, they're wearing the socks. Or as a woman, I'll be like, I can't be naked and then just wear fluffy socks. Like that would look really, like I don't think that's sexy. But when I heard it, to your point, it didn't dawn on me in the guy thing with the blood flow, which makes complete sense. So now I'm going to tell my husband he can wear his socks as long as he likes. But as a woman, when I think about it, and as you explained it, of like how you're able to relax because you're not cold and because you're not tense and you're not shivering. Right. And so, but like that one little thing that women can go from 50% orgasm to 80% just by wearing socks, it's a missed tactic that we're not, that we're not currently using.
Yeah, I mean, temperature regulation is different in men and women, right? And so we're more cold often than men. And so it makes sense that you would wear socks and feel warmer, right? And I think that's like, why not? Why should we ever shame somebody for something that increases their pleasure? So if they are able to relax and be more mindful in the moment because they're not thinking about how cold they are, then they're going to have a better orgasm, period.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so apparently an apple a day can actually boost your sex excitement. So I'll read you the study and I'd love to know your thoughts. So researchers from Santa Clarita Regional Hospital in Italy recruited 731 premenopausal women between the age of 18 and 43, all of whom had no recent history of complaints of sexual disorder. The participants were split into two groups: apple eaters who ate 1 to 2 apples a day and non-apple eaters who ate less than an apple a day. Then all the women completed the Female Sexual Function Index questionnaire, which asks 19 questions about desire, arousal, lubrication, orgasm, satisfaction, and pain. And get this, women who ate 1 or more apples a day had higher sexual function scores, particularly in the lubrication and desire category. What the hell is going on? Do we all now need to stop eating like apples?
No, I think you have to think about it in terms of the people who eat apples are probably more likely to have a more nutritious diet, right? So they're more likely getting vegetables and fruits in their diet and getting more unprocessed foods, because you think about it, right? People who are eating an apple are probably people who are health conscious, right? For the most part. And so they're probably eating less processed foods, getting more fruits and getting more vegetables than those who are not. Now, I'm not sure if they controlled for that in this study, but ultimately, if they did control for all other factors of diet, which I find very difficult to believe because that would be like groundbreaking, right? Research if it was really just the apple. So I think ultimately it's probably just a reflection of their diet as a whole. And we know that people who have a Mediterranean diet, that's the best studied diet. Now, there's other diets that work for different people, but the one that's been most extensively studied is the Mediterranean diet. So lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, nuts and seeds and healthy oils, and then a little bit of meat and protein, whatever that is, fish, is essentially the best diet. Least processed food as possible. And that actually improves a whole host of things in our bodies: heart health, sexual function because of heart health. So the important thing about our genitals is that they will reflect our overall health. So we sexual health doctors will say sexual health is health, because very often when you have a problem with your sex life because you're not getting aroused or you're not getting lubricated or you're not having as much desire, it could be a harbinger of other things that are wrong in your body. So the most prominent example in men is erectile dysfunction. And that's because when men develop erectile dysfunction, the arteries to the penis are about 1 to 2 millimeters. When you look at the arteries to the heart, they're about 3 to 4 millimeters. So when you get plaques that block flow to the penis, you're going to see signs of that in the penis before you see heart problems. And so in men who are diagnosed with ED, about 15% of them 7 years later will develop a heart attack.
Whoa.
Yeah. So similarly, other issues with your genitals, whether it's sexual function, are also very strongly correlated with your overall health.
Thank you for breaking that down. It's interesting how someone may take a piece of data and like, well, eat more apples and, you know, you'll be healthy. But to your point of the connection between the lifestyle and then how you show up every day and then your sexual health and then your longevity, like that's just insane.
Yeah.
And understanding then, like you were saying, the arteries and not kind of blocking them. Is it true then that masturbation actually can help you live longer?
The data is mostly on orgasms, right? How orgasms are beneficial overall because orgasms will reduce stress. It will even reduce blood pressure, will improve your mood, will improve your focus. So the orgasms themselves are really powerful. Now, masturbation is sometimes the only way people can achieve orgasm. And it's the only way they may feel comfortable achieving orgasm, or it's the only way that they can actually because of safe sex, the only way that they feel like, okay, I don't have to worry about having a partner and worrying about STDs. And so that can play a huge role. And masturbation for those reasons is very, very powerful, allowing you to, one, achieve orgasm, but know your body and know exactly what turns you on, what feels good, what doesn't. And so I think in those terms, masturbation to achieve orgasm is really, really powerful in terms of getting a longer life.
So where does the myth come from where it's like growing up, right? If you like, I've just heard guys say it's like, oh, I was told if I masturbate too much, my penis is going to fall off.
Yeah, it's, well, a lot of it. So if you look back to history, right, masturbation was considered very, very negatively. And in fact, like you could be persecuted for masturbating or even getting erections that you weren't meant to. And again, this is all because the history books also favor male history, but they would because nocturnal erections were natural, people would actually make you wear like chastity sort of belts or things like that to avoid getting erections because they thought it was so bad and it was so sinful to masturbate. And so a lot of that has perpetuated through the years. And I think if you're using masturbation for the purposes of pleasure, for the purposes of enjoyment, and it's not taking over your life, meaning you don't prefer masturbation to your partner, you're not doing it every day to the point where you're missing work or you're missing hanging out with friends or doing other productive activities to masturbate, then it's completely safe and healthy to go ahead and continue masturbating.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know. And I'm not sure if this is a man's point of view, but apparently semen is good for you.
So in terms of having sex or in terms of ingesting semen?
And swallowing. I was like, did a man make this up? But apparently I read it's got like B12 and iron and magnesium.
Sure, it has some minerals and it has fructose and it has sort of a whole host of factors in it. It's not dangerous by any means. Now, it being healthy is sort of a stretch, right? I think healthy is eating your fruits and vegetables regularly, but it's not going to hurt you. It's certainly not going to hurt you, and it's certainly not dangerous in any way.
Okay, because when I read about it again, I was like, it had like all these like minerals, and I was like, is this actually true? Because I'm always the one, I don't try not to fight against facts. I'm just like, if this is fact, then maybe I need to be doing it.
Factually, yes, it has all these minerals, but it's not like the dose of it is so high that you can't get it from eating regular foods.
And don't replace your supplements for semen.
Unless you want to. But don't feel forced.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I've got some fun facts for us, girl, and I want you to kind of break down, almost as I was finding them, I was like, why? What is it? And so I love if you can explain these. Okay, sure. Number one. And for everyone at home, you don't know what I'm about to say, so I'm literally going to throw them at you. 84% of women say they have sex to get their husbands to help with housework.
I believe that. A lot of people use sex as a tool to get what they want, which is so horrible, right? Sex should be about pleasure, about being with your partner in intimate space. It's basically weaponizing sex, right? So I'm not surprised that people have this thing where they're sex is powerful, right? And the person who is the gatekeeper of sex holds the power. So very often women have lower desire than men. And that's not always true, but that's more common. And so they become the gatekeepers because they only have sex when she wants to. And so she can weaponize that to get what she wants. And that actually sets you up for really bad relationship dynamics, right? Because now sex is not about sex, it's about getting something. And it's not really what it's meant for.
Yeah, when I was like, it didn't really surprise me either. But to your point, it does make me, the weaponizing was like when you said that is actually really strong. But then I can see the other side of it. It's like, well, if they really want to, and it's like, it's not a big deal right now. My husband is, horny, and it's like, yeah, fine, I'll do it for them. Like it's almost like sometimes a nice gift to give someone.
That's great. Gift is wonderful. And I think you can give gifts to your partner. Like it's okay if you're not always 100% in the mood. And women are more likely to have what's called responsive desire, right? So where they'll be with their partner, they may not be turned on right away, but as they start touching them, as they start being with them, like, oh yeah, I like that. And the desire comes afterwards. And so that's actually more common, and it's more common in long-term relationships for both genders, but very common in women. And that's not a bad thing. So like, yeah, sometimes when you start touching your partner or being with them, you may not be in the mood, but it sort of comes with a little bit of time. And gifting your partner sex is okay. Like we shouldn't feel bad about it.
Right.
It's totally fine to gift your partner sex, but like it shouldn't always be that way.
Yeah, agreed. It actually might, as you were talking, I was like, it could be like a good catalyst for a woman for foreplay. Like if the guy came home, guys, if you're listening, if a guy came home and was like, baby, I'll do the dishes for you.
Yeah.
And now it's like, yeah, I feel seen, I feel heard, and now it becomes a catalyst into potentially getting that arousal going. But I think part of it maybe, and I'd love to hear your thoughts of, it's just alleviating a lot of stress. 100%. And it's the stress that hold women back from being sexually aroused.
That's exactly it. So that's exactly it. And we, when you look at studies about women who fake orgasm, going again full circle, a lot of them do it because they have a whole bunch of, like the reasons they can't orgasm are because of stress, because they're taking care of the home, they're taking care of the social calendar, they're taking care of work, they're taking care of kids if they have them, or the dog or whatever, right? They're the primary burdensome person in the household. And that's not always true. So I want to be careful because I get, men are like, well, I do a lot too. And absolutely, there are plenty of households where it's 50-50. But even then, there's a lot of stressors in life. And so if you help with something you're not usually helping with, that can be very sexy for both ways, right? Like if I do something for my husband, like I sit and watch sports with him when I normally don't, that may be really like cool for him. It's like, oh, you're finally sharing something I love with me. And that may be a huge turn on. Or you help him with something. So maybe it's like you washed his car or you did something that he needed to do and you did. That could be a huge turn on. It doesn't need to be gendered. It's just about like doing something that alleviates stress, that makes you feel good and see your partner in like a different light, right? You're like, oh, that's novel, that's new, that's exciting.
I love that. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'm having so much fun. All right, 79% of men are growers while 21% are showers.
Yes, so this is true. Men will grow or show, and that can change over a lifetime. So what that means is that when you get an erection, some people will have quite a big increase in length, whereas some will not, and they will just remain sort of similar to their flaccid size. Now, that is sort of a reflection of collagen content and a variety of different things. Normally younger guys are more likely to be growers, and that can change over a lifetime because as you age, your tissues become less elastic. But it's not good or bad or one thing or the other. It just is what it is. And sort of like, you can't force yourself to be one or the other, but just again, maintaining a healthy lifestyle will improve your tissue elasticity overall and make sure that you maintain that good full length. So a lot of, in general, a lot of times, we know that erectile dysfunction is really, really common. And over the age of 50, you're got half of men are having issues with erections. And the most common cause is other health issues, right? So high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, all those things will affect blood flow. And when you get less erections, you're also getting over time changing the quality of the tissue. So there's maybe more scar tissue and it's not going to expand as much. It's not going to get as long. And And so just in general, try to stay healthy early. Don't get diabetes, don't get high blood pressure, keep a good diet, continue exercising is going to make sure that you maintain what you got.
Yeah, I had no idea. And again, I just find this stuff fascinating. Understanding men and understand how they function and understanding when they get over to 50, like that is so important, I think, for us women to also know. It's very important for us to know ourselves, but also know and anticipate. Because if you don't have a penis, you don't necessarily know, let's face it, right? And people aren't talking about this sort of thing. So thank you, that knowledge is very powerful.
Yeah.
45% of women climax the first time they have sex with a male partner. But 95% of women climax when they have sex with a woman for the first time.
Yes. So this is called the orgasm gap. And actually, I thought you were going to say is 95% of men climax on the first sexual encounter, which is also true. And this is obviously a disparate in understanding female anatomy, right? As we talked about earlier, clitoral stimulation is the way 85% of women climax. And even if you look at that other 5 to 10% of that 15%, a lot of them are having penetration, but they're also having clitoral stimulation at the same time. So almost like the majority of women need clitoral stimulation to climax. But when you watch media or you watch erotic films or whatever, you're not seeing clitoral stimulation. And that's how the majority of men are learning, and again, we're being very gendered here, men are learning how to please a woman, whereas women learn how to please women by pleasing themselves. And so it's really just a lack of understanding and a lack of displaying of what normal sexual encounters are like throughout media and where people are learning from. So I wish that we taught people about their anatomy in school, right? But there's no time for that in the current curriculum, right? So people don't leave school knowing their body parts, particularly their genital anatomy. They don't understand what normal is. So how many times should you get, how long should sex last? How long does it take for someone to get turned on? How long does it take for, how does someone actually reach climax? What are the things you need to do? And we don't teach people that, and that leads to so much insecurity and discomfort with sex and having bad sexual encounters and then feeling like something's wrong with you and then having shame, and then it just perpetuates over and over, right?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. If you're a guy and you've just watched porn, let's say, it's like you think, oh, a woman wants me to always be aggressive, to rip their clothes off, to turn them on their, on their front and just pound them. It's like, no. I mean, some women may, no shame or judgment,
right.
Good for you. But to your point is that if we've learned our bodies, because when I read that, I was like, have lesbians got it down pat? like we need more lesbian advice then. But you're right, it's that we know our body ourselves, and so we understand it. And so how would we then encourage guys to start to learn? What would be that mechanism to help men understand us more? Because I don't just want to blame men and say, guys have to go do their research. Yes, guys really should. But if you're in a relationship, how do you navigate having your guy start to learn these types of things about your body?
You're on your way to a hot date, you got your sexy pants on and you feel great. You eat the bread, you drink some wine, just living your freaking best life. When suddenly, stomach pain starts to strike. Guys, I freaking get it. I've literally felt your pain. Literally, stomach cramps, bloating, gas, discomfort. These are all freaking signs that your gut is saying something isn't right and your confidence takes a freaking nosedive. But thankfully, we can fix a lot of these issues, guys, with today's sponsor, Bilyeu, and their simple at-home gut health test. Simply collect and ship your sample and you'll get results in 2 to 3 weeks via the app. See your 20 integrative health scores that foods are good and bad for your biome, and so much more. My homie, don't let an imbalanced gut keep you from feeling like a badass. Bilyeu is offering $110 off your test right now. Take control of your health today with Bilyeu.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing I wanted to mention is that when you have two people of the same gender in a room, they have to talk. They have no choice because the roles are not defined, right? You don't know who's going to be doing the pleasing, who's going to be receiving the pleasing. So you have to discuss with each other what you're going to do and also what you like. And so it's as simple as having the conversation about hey, I like this. And the one thing is that women need foreplay. It takes longer for women's bodies to lubricate and be fully aroused. So I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to women who come in with painful sex and I say, 1, take more time with foreplay, and 2, add lubricant, because some people will make more lubricant than others, and it's not a reflection of how turned on you are. It may be just in the matter of your hormones, your genetics, whatever, or the medications you're on. And so ultimately, lube is not something to be ashamed of. It can just make it more fun. And same thing is like, you just have to like talk to them and be like, it really makes me feel good when you do this first. And if you have a good partner, they're going to pick up on that, right? And they're going to do those things. And so really just make it about like, this is what I like, and try to have that conversation well in advance or away from the bedroom. So it's like we're in the kitchen or we're in the car or we're somewhere where it's not sexual. So we can have this conversation in a non-confrontational way where the person's not like, oh, am I not good enough? Did I not do it right? Did I not, like not right after sex, right? Like wait a little bit and have the conversation and realize it may take a few conversations. It may not just be one. And that's okay because it's worth working for.
Yeah. Even that little nuance that you said, it was like, don't go in there saying, don't do this. Go in there saying that this makes me feel good. I think is so important, because natural instinct is to say like, hey, can you not do that? Because it feels a little, you know, whatever. But being there like, hey, this really turns me on, I think would help that dynamic and encourage the guy to be even more excited. Obviously, if we're talking about, you know, heterosexual relationships, that it would encourage the guy to do it more.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I've also heard you say, when you're having sex with a guy, if he can't keep hard, don't ask them, why can't they stay hard?
Yes. Just keep going. Like, meaning like, if they say stop, then that's okay. Or you could say, hey, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Like, let's just keep having fun. It doesn't have to be like, okay, so fine, they can't penetrate me, but there's other things you can do. You can still pleasure them. They can still pleasure you, and they can still orgasm without an erection, even though it's hard for them because they don't mentally think of that as being like able to do, right? They always, they've sort of made this brain pathway where erection leads to orgasm. And so when the erection goes away, it becomes much more difficult because they have that association, but they can orgasm without an erection and they can still pleasure you. So trying to not make it about you and let them sort of like, it's okay. It's totally okay. Like if they react, like it's okay. I'm still having fun. Like we can keep going. And if they want to, great. And if they don't, give them their respect. But don't be like, oh, did I do something? Do you hate me? Like don't do that, because that's just going to kill the mood. They're going to get more anxiety about it. And they're going to bring that to their next sexual encounter, which is going to make it, even if they could get an erection, they can't now because they're super stressed about it.
Yeah, when I heard you say it, it's like, I can see both sides, right? It's like the woman maybe really wants to know, like, oh my God, is everything okay?
Yeah.
You know, is there something wrong? Because women are caretakers and we're people pleasers. So that kind of then kicks in. But to your point, that then that's now potentially activating the guy and actually making it worse for them, because now they probably have the shame and the guilt. And it's like, oh my God, now she's asking me, I don't know what to say because I can't even explain it.
Yes. And I will tell you, there's so many people where I see a lot of men with erectile dysfunction, and I will be like, have you talked to your partner? Does she even mind? Because we know that so many women, in terms of pleasure, get orgasms through clitoral stimulation, which doesn't require penetration, right? And so many women like don't need to have a penetrative, they don't need to have sex with a penetrative anything to orgasm. And while some people do enjoy orgasm with penetration, that's not necessary for the large majority of women. And so if they don't care, then if they're still enjoying themselves, then if it's for you, great. But if you're doing it for your partner, you have to ask them and find out if that's even an issue for them, because you know, what's medication is one thing, but then adding on, you can, you know, inject your penis, you can do surgeries. Like, are you really going to have a surgery if your partner doesn't care? You know? And so I think it's important to have those discussions.
I think in those moments that as a woman, I'm just speaking for myself actually, is that I just like, my confidence starts to dip. It's like, oh God, am I not sexy enough, right? And we get in our own heads. And so you try to then rationalize to get an answer. And I think that that's why you then automatically may ask to try and get the answer. But I love that you've broken that down and like really helping us understand what's going to enhance the sexual pleasure and actually what's going to hinder it.
I think you can also look at it from your perspective. If you don't orgasm once and your partner's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is it okay? Like, did you know, you are going to start being like, oh man, is something wrong with me? Why didn't I orgasm that one time? And it's like, it's normal. You're going to orgasm. Sometimes you may not. That's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. Yes, we want to orgasm every time, but the point is pleasure, right? Enjoy the journey. Don't just hurry up to get to the destination. Think about if you would like that. Like, would you want of course you want your partner to care, but you don't want them to be like over the top, like, oh my God, you can't orgasm anymore. You're broken. Like something's wrong with you, right? Because that's what they're feeling. They're feeling like something's wrong with me. I can't get an erection. They're not thinking it's you. They're worried about themselves. And you similarly, they may just be worried that they're not stimulating you well enough, but you may take it as like, man, I used to be able to orgasm so quickly and now I'm taking longer. Like, what's wrong with me?
So true. And now go full circle, but even when we first started, it's like that's probably what sometimes then leads to men and women faking it because they're so worried about having that conversation, about bringing it up, about feeling the shame and the guilt. And so actually in the moment, it's just easier just to fake it, move on. You don't think about it next time.
And they feel good. And everyone feels
right. Everyone feels
good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everyone thinks everybody was pleased, but it really hurts the relationship, right? Because people change over a lifetime. Like we know that sensation goes down, that things change. And during menopause, women notably have a decrease in ability to achieve climax, sometimes for a lot of women. And that, we know these things happen. And the point is like, okay, so what if things change? Things change and we can work together to figure out what is going to get you to orgasm. But again, that's not the goal. The goal is to enjoy pleasure. We don't want to spend the whole time when we're with our partner thinking about, am I going to come? Am I going to orgasm? Am I going to climax? I don't know, right? And so that's sort of like the big thing. You want to enjoy the pleasure. And of course, orgasm is great. I have orgasms are wonderful, but okay, so maybe that's not working anymore. Maybe you need to bring a toy in the bedroom, or maybe you need to do something else, or try a different way. That doesn't mean you're broken or something's wrong. It just means that you got to talk about it and be open to trying new things.
Hell yeah. Amen, sister.
Yeah.
All right. 50 to 75% of women who have had an orgasm require clitoral stimulation. Most women are unable to have an orgasm through intercourse. So you kind of, you said that earlier.
Yeah.
Is it possible, if you've only orgasmed through clitoral, is it possible to train yourself to orgasm through penetration? Or is it a genetic thing and you either have it or you don't? Or is this, I just need to keep training like I do in the gym?
Yes. So basically, sex is a skill. So in general, you can always train to be better. But that doesn't mean you should have sex unsafe, just to be clear.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So the clitoris, if you think about the anatomy, it has a shaft and then it gets a wishbone and it goes around the vagina. And so they've actually shown that people who have a smaller distance between the clitoris and the vagina will actually be more likely to orgasm through vaginal penetration.
Whoa, so the less space, the more likely.
Because the clitoris is now closer.
Yeah.
And so that's something you can't necessarily overcome, but you can try different ways to stimulate vaginally, right? So maybe it's like you need stimulation of the anterior wall of the vagina. That's why people talk about the G-spot, which is actually an erogenous zone where there's lots of nerves underneath the 2/3 of the vagina. That's where the Skene's glands are, and there's lots of nerves there. But essentially, you can try to stimulate kind of more anterior or on the sides or the walls where the clitoris, the legs of the clitoris are. And so you can sort of experiment with does this position maybe hit that spot a little more or this one that way? And some people are just more likely to orgasm through vaginal penetration because the cervix is more sensitive. So they're, when they feel that stimulation of their cervix, they're actually, getting those nerves are getting turned on and they're feeling more pleasure and they can then climax that way. And so really, I think the big thing is one, finding out what feels pleasurable and then being able to really focus in on it and allow yourself to feel that pleasure can allow you to orgasm in different ways, whether it's penetrative or not. Some people will climax through just nipple stimulation, right? Or different erogenous zones. And so it's all about sort of allowing yourself to feel pleasure and really letting your body kind of go into it.
So does it make a difference then on the guy's size and girth? Because guys have there's if they've hit the woman's G-spot, right? They feel proud. It's like they've conquered something. And so, yeah, when I think about it, would it make a difference then based on the distance between your clit and your vagina and then the guy's size, length, and girth? Does any of that correlate?
It could, right? For some women, particularly if you have cervical innervation that's really pleasurable, they may find a larger penis to be more pleasurable. But some people actually have pain, right? If you penetrate them and you hit their cervix, that can actually be very, very painful. So it really depends person to person. But the interesting point is that the vaginal length is about 3 inches or so. And it can about double in size when you're aroused. So you can accommodate. Yes.
What? Hang on. What?
So the vagina doubles in length and width when you are aroused, as you're getting aroused.
Width I kind of get, but length?
Your cervix actually moves up and out of the way, and it allows for penetration. And so that's why it's so important to have good foreplay, to allow that accommodation so that she will feel comfortable when you penetrate her. And like, it's super important to make sure you're getting enough arousal for your body to be ready to achieve or allow that penetration.
I'm like so gobsmacked right now. I'm not, like, again, width I kind of get.
Yeah.
Because you think, like, well, you've got to push a baby out. You have to be flexible, right? Women have to have the adaptability. But the length thing, and then to your point of the arousal, is that then if you arouse them first, then that has gotten deeper, then length has changed.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that does mean that, you know, if you're above maybe 5 or 6 inches, the average is about 5.1 to 5.6 inches in terms of erect length. If you're much bigger than that, it's probably going to be too big. You're not going to be able to put the entire shaft into the vagina. Now, of course, there's variation person to person. Someone may have a longer vaginal length, someone may have a shorter vaginal length. And so sort of like every person's a little different, but you know, a 12-inch phallus is probably too big for the large majority of women.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to a myth I actually have, and I'm just going to squeeze it in here, is that the myth of that, like the bigger they are, the better.
Yes, and the funny thing is it's really societal, right? We talk about it all the time. Women joke about it. It's on the media, the bigger the better. And oh, if you have a small phallus, oh God, like poor you, right? And it's so sad because really, it's not even that important. It's important to have a baby, right? You need to penetrate and deliver sperm to have a baby. But for pleasure, there's so many ways to achieve pleasure and climax that like the phallus is important, but it's really not the most important thing at all. The most important thing is knowing how your partner achieves climax and stimulating them appropriately. And you don't need a phallus for that. And there's so much technology, right? People will say like, oh, I don't want to use a sex toy. I don't want to use this, but you use a microwave to warm up your food. So like, you know, you're not making a fire by yourself to warm up your food. Like, it's okay to like use tools to help you achieve climax or help your partner achieve climax.
You to say that. That's so good. I'm so going to steal that from you. That's amazing. Is there a range then where you're like, okay, look, yeah, because I hear what you're saying. It all depends on the person and the guy and the woman, or, you know, or totally get. But is there a range where you're like, okay, yes, that is a little small, like I feel compassion, but like micro penises?
Yes, micro penises are ones that are like less than like 2 inches or like 1.5 inches. So they're significantly smaller. This is like a real physiologic problem that you can get surgery for to correct. But again, not necessary, but more so like a real issue that people face. And so it's a small subset of patients. It's not a huge number of people that have that problem. Now, in terms of, you know, what size is optimal, they've actually, so because of transgender research, they've looked at when they're building these new penises for people who are transgender, they've looked at what's the best size, like how long should it be and how girthy should it be. And so the way they kind of, there was one study that looked at sex toys. So like what size sex toy do people buy? And on average, the length of the sex toy was about 6 inches. Now, thinking about that, you're not putting the entire sex toy into the vagina, right? You're holding it with some sort of, you know, at the end or something. So it's not going to be exact. So that's about the average, right? The average is about 5.1 to 5.6 inches. And so it's about the average. And the girth also that the most bought sex toys was also very similar to average girth. And so generally speaking, like people are happy and pleased with average length and average girth.
And it's just more like of a guy's ego then, where it's like they think that women want bigger the better?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about it, right? We may not even want it, right? Like people, like I caught myself once. I was on a podcast and this woman was talking about how her partner was really well endowed. I was like, oh, wow, you're so lucky. And then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that, right? And I was like, I don't even mean that. It just came out.
Right.
Like it was not even intentional. It was just like society society has ingrained it in my brain. And even as a urologist, I talk about this all the time. It's still there in my brain because I've literally been watching TV and hearing about jokes and other women talk about this for my entire life, right? And so you have to sort of think about that. Like every single person is hearing this, man, woman, child, everyone's hearing about it, right? And so you're like, oh, obviously bigger is better. We joke about it all the time.
That's so true. I love that you just admitted that as well.
I will admit it.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Well, one of my friends in our early 20s, because I'd never heard of this, and that's why I really want to talk about everything, because it's like, if we don't almost know, sometimes it can be very surprising. And my friend had that moment where she was dating this guy. They finally decided to sleep together, and she said it was less than 2 inches. And she was like, I didn't know what to do. I was embarrassed. I was like, because she then felt uncomfortable, because she didn't expect it. She'd never heard of a micro penis before. And so then he started, so she was like, I just faked an orgasm because I didn't want him to feel bad. Anyway, and so it became this whole thing, right? Where she was just like, in shock, didn't know how to handle it. But I do have so much compassion for a guy that has to do that, or has one. So understanding what it is and understanding that it doesn't then equate to definitely you can't give a woman pleasure. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because again, if we're not talking about it, then we may be shocked or not know about it. And so, it always, again, have just compassion for the guy. And so the last thing you want is to be in shock.
Yes. And I think the other important thing I want people to take away is don't fake orgasms, because you're then giving that guy the false sense that he's really great in bed, and he's going to take that to all of his other sexual encounters. And so I know we want to make people feel good, but like ultimately, like we want people to be good and to feel good. And so we should be honest with them. Again, not in that moment, not in that second. Maybe you faked it and you didn't mean to, but be like, hey, I didn't want to say anything, but like, if you really like the person, like you'd be like, well, I like you. I want to be sexually pleased by you. And we don't have to, it doesn't have to be with your penis. It can be with other things. That was going to be my follow-up. How do you approach that? Because it must be so delicate. It is delicate. And I think, not everyone can hear that or handle that, but I guarantee you that guy knows that he's not well endowed, has been dealing with it his whole life. And so he's not like expecting, if he was shocked, then that would just actually tell me that there's something wrong up there for him, right? Like he can't be like, he grew up in the same society we did. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And one thing I heard you say is that women, just like men, get blue balls, but you call it blue vulva.
Yeah.
Never heard of that. How the hell do women get blue vulva? And if you don't mind explaining to me the difference maybe between blue balls and blue vulva.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the basics, right? When you get aroused, what happens is you get increased blood flow to your genitals. And so what we need to know as women is that our clitoris is the exact homologue of the penis. And the scrotum is the exact homologue of the labia majora. So when you're a fetus, those tissues go on to make those respective things. So what becomes a penis in a man becomes a clitoris in a woman. And what becomes a scrotum in a man becomes a labia majora in women, or the big lips of the vagina. And so in both genders, now this hasn't been studied as extensively in women, and I will preface that a lot of the data that we have in sexual health is for men. But what happens, generally speaking, in terms of physiology, is blood flows into that area. It engorges the shaft of the penis or the clitoris of the female. And so that is how you get aroused, and it gets very full, it gets very erect, and you can have blood flow to the genitals. So in men, the testicles will get blood flow and that will get larger. And similarly in women, the lips of the vagina will get engorged and also fuller with blood. And so when you orgasm, that blood flow then goes back into the body, right? And so if you have a prolonged arousal and you don't get that release, then that blood flow can take longer to leave, giving you that achy discomfort. And for some people, it can be really strong. So there's actually been young men in the ER with strong, sudden onsets of testicular pain. And later you find out that it's just proceeding after arousal. And so really it's just that the pain goes away after about an hour, but it was so bad that this young boy decided to come to the ER, right? And so it can be really uncomfortable, and it's totally normal. And it's not something to be scared about. It's just knowing what it is and then being able to address that. So whether it's by masturbating or taking a cold shower or even doing like a Valsalva, which is like bearing down, that can actually help get that blood flow moving. And so simply like just kind of pushing down, like you're having a bowel movement, but not really pushing down, that can help relieve some of that discomfort.
Wow, thank you for breaking that down. I'd never heard of blue vulva before. So now the next fact is that you can induce your sex dreams by sleep positions. And I've got a study on that I'd love to read to you and then get your thoughts on it. A study found that people who slept face down on their stomach with their arms stretched above their head had more sexual dreams.
Yes, that makes sense because we're sitting with our genitals facing the bed, which will rub against the bed over the course of your sleep, right? You're moving, you're sleeping. And so that pressure can cause a reflex of erection, or in women's case, clitoral erection. And then that can then induce, like that feeling can induce your brain to start thinking about sexual things. Now, it doesn't mean that that's always the case. You will still, everyone, man or woman, will have 3 to 4 erectile episodes in their sleep. So you will get an engorged clitoris 3 or 4 times at night, and men will get an engorged penis or an erection 3 or 4 times at night. And that's why men will often wake up with an erection, because that's part of when they wake up, their REM sleep is at their highest. And that's also correlated with when people get these spontaneous nighttime erections.
Wow.
And so it's not that they're necessarily turned on, it's just that this is a sort of normal physiologic process. And similarly, women can have that too. And they're not always associated with sexual dreams, but certainly sometimes they can be.
Wow. So technically then, do women also kind of wake up with a hard on? We just don't see it?
Well, actually, the interesting thing about this is, well, again, not as much data, but men's erections seem to correlate with their REM cycle differently than women. So actually, the timing of when men wake up seems to be more correlated with the erection, whereas in women, it's not necessarily that specific.
Oh my God, that's fascinating. I'd love to know once they do real deep studies of what that actually is and when that would be for women. And thinking about when we're, back in the caveman days in tribes, it's like a woman, how would that benefit a woman versus how would that benefit a guy? I don't know. I love thinking about it.
Well, I think the one thing for both is that both men and women's testosterone levels highest in the morning, which is correlated with desire, which makes sense. You want both genders who are going to reproduce to have desire at the same time of day. But, it is harder to study women. With men, you can put a little device on there, like a circular device on their penis to actually measure the number of times they get erect and how firm they get. Whereas for women, it's a little bit more challenging to get that same amount of detail because most of the clitoris is internal.
Why, out of curiosity, is desire the strongest in the morning?
Because your testosterone is highest. So our testosterone follows a circadian rhythm. And now desire is complex, right? But testosterone is one of the large drivers of desire. It's a hormone that we all have. Women have more testosterone than they do estrogen in their bodies. So it's very important. And it's a huge driver of desire. So in the morning, early morning, when your circadian rhythm is starting off, that's when your testosterone is highest, and it fluctuates and gets lower throughout the day. Then it has another peak and then goes down again, and it's lowest in the evening, actually. And so I always tell people, sometimes having sex in the morning is better, or even before dinner, because one, you're kind of using your hormones to your advantage.
I heard you say that. I'm like, it's so true, especially as a woman. I'm just going to be honest. The last thing I want to do, after having this big meal is when you feel kind of bloated and your tummy's sensitive and you just want to hang back. That's the last thing I want. I don't feel sexy at all.
Exactly.
But because I always think about the biology is evolved in a way to for us to procreate and survive. So when I think about that, I think about, desire comes from testosterone being high in the morning, but then why would testosterone be high in the morning? What is it that, and this is more of a fascination, why would that be important for us to procreate in the morning?
Well, I don't know that it's the procreation is necessarily supposed to be in the morning, but certainly it's with light, right? Daylight. So you want to be able to see your partner, right? So that's one. But two, testosterone is used for a whole bunch of things, not just desire, right? It helps with muscle mass and movement and helps you have less fat. And so you think about, you want a big boost of testosterone so you have the most energy in the morning to go about your day and hunt and gather or, do whatever the things you need to do throughout the day. And then it's going to wean before sleep, because then you're going to rejuvenate your body's testosterone and re-energize yourself overnight.
So if someone's listening right now then and they really want to get close with their partner, then doing that in the morning is typically a better solution because then there's no like the wean off of the testosterone throughout the day?
I mean, everyone's a little different. Like some people don't love morning sex. And I would say, talk to your partner. Like when are they most turned on? When are you most turned on? And like for some people, like they're like, yeah, I can't have sex after dinner. So like, they're just like, I just can't, I'm not going to perform as well, or I'm not going to have, I'm not going to feel good. And so then don't like, if you're someone who's always like, oh, it just makes sense to always have it at night, because that's what we're told, right? From media, like everyone's having sex at the end of the day, everyone's having sex at night. So you sort of internalize that, but maybe that's actually not what turns you on. And so sort of pay attention to your own cues. Like when do you feel like, oh, I could have sex right now, or wow, that turns me on, and sort of kind of figure that out for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's that's super powerful as well, and having those conversations with your partner. I've had massive gut and health issues, and so for me, if I have sugar, I'm done for the night. And so me and my husband very much talk about it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have dessert, babe, but we're gonna have it this time so that we can have the sex, right? And we just like kind of plan it versus not talking about it, finding yourself not having the sex, and then sadly, the last thing you ever want in a long-term relationship, especially, is the bed death where you're not having the sex.
Yeah. One thing you brought up, which is so important, is planning it, right? I get a lot of pushback from people who are like, I don't want to plan sex. And I'm like, you don't have to plan sex, but you have to plan time to be intimate. And the reason is, think about when we were younger. We used to go on dates, right? And we used to be like, oh, I'm going to see my partner on Friday. I'm going to get super excited. I'm going to get all dressed up. I'm going to shave. I'm going to do all the things and look really cute for my date. And there might be sex, right? So you sort of like get yourself excited. You get yourself in the mood, and then it's great, right? But now we're with our partners. If you're married and in a monogamous relationship with your partner and you see them all the time, you're like, oh, they're always there. We can have sex anytime. But it becomes like, oh, I'm too tired. I'm too this. I'm too stressed. And so you're not prioritizing sex or intimacy, right? Because you're just like, they're always there. Like they're always going to be there. But it's sort of like you have to take the time. People talk about date night, and date night's important, but so is time for intimacy. Like actually remembering that like you like holding each other and touching each other and feeling each other. And so like getting into that zone and making it a priority. Like we're not going to look at our phones. We're not going to talk about the kids or the work or whatever. And we're just going to be with each other and remember what that feels like can be super powerful.
Yeah, I love that. And being very honest and transparent about exactly what that looks like. So for my husband, I said, babe, I really want some more romance in our lives. And he goes, what does that look like? And I was like, that's a really great question, because romance to him could be very different than, it is. Romance to him is big floodlights and, like a microscope when we're having sex, but romance to me is dim lights and the candles and the soft music. So I just told him, like, this is what I'm looking for: candles, music, and that way you can kind of, they can show up for you.
Yeah, it's so important to bring that up, because, you might think that something is really going to turn your partner on when that's not really what's turning them on, right? They might not care about the way you're dressed or the way your hair. Like my partner will tell me he likes it when I'm like literally studying and look like a nerd, because it just like, he's like, I love that you're like being yourself and I like you. I don't like need you to be done up or something else. And so I think that's really important to realize, like, well, that's what turns my partner on and this is what turns me on, and let's talk about it. Like even writing down the things that really turn you on, or even like desires, like what you wish you could do, whether it's kinky, whether it's not, like things that you've always wanted to try and not, and making a list of those and having your partner make a list of them and then slowly sharing them with each other can be super powerful.
Yeah. Does sex really cure headaches?
Well, the way it's the orgasm, right? So having sex to orgasm will actually increase your pain threshold. That's why you've seen maybe on TV shows like have an orgasm when you're trying to have childbirth or like things like that, right? But they do actually reduce the amount of pain you perceive. So they're actually increasing your pain threshold. So yes, absolutely. If you are having a headache and you orgasm and you feel like your headache got better, that may be why. And then there's also a whole bunch of feel-good hormones that are released when you orgasm, right? And so those hormones take over your brain and you're more focused on the feeling good, and that will reduce then your pain sensitivity.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've in the past, it's like, okay, well, they say it should be, and I found it to be true. I just never knew how. And apparently it's something like 60%, if you've even suffered from migraines, 60% of people, if they have, an orgasm, they feel less pain.
Yeah. Well, sometimes a lot of people will carry around a lot of tension in their pelvic floor and we don't know about it, right? And so just like people get TMJ, they get those headaches and they clench their jaw at night, but they have no control over it. They're sleeping, right? Very similarly, people can get tension and their body will hold it in their pelvic floor muscles. So those muscles, instead of being long and relaxed, will get tight and short. And then that can create sort of discomfort and pain. And so when sometimes releasing those muscles can even happen with orgasm. Sometimes that can exacerbate the pain in those people, but in other times, if it's not that bad, sometimes just having the orgasm actually causes this involuntary contraction and then relaxation, which is what they actually need.
Understand. So in case people don't know what pelvic flooring is, do you mind just explaining that?
Absolutely. So it's basically a bowl of muscles that's in our pelvis that sits underneath our organs. So underneath our bladder, underneath our rectum, underneath our uterus, around our vagina and urethra where we pee from. So all of those organs can be affected when you have a tense pelvic floor. And this is, like I said, very underdiagnosed, very common. And actually you can have symptoms like you're going to the bathroom often, you're having constipation, you're having pain with sex, you're having in men pain with ejaculation or pain with erections, you're having just sort of even like hip discomfort. So all those things or lower back pain, all those things can be affected if your pelvic floor is not in alignment. It's actually a huge, important part of our day-to-day like movement activities. And so it's very powerful and very under-recognized, particularly in men. We don't see it very often or we don't examine it. So women, you can actually feel it very easily through the vaginal canal. So sometimes you'll notice that you feel tense there, or someone may say it's very tense, like when you get your pelvic exam. But for men, it's most often during a rectal exam that you can feel those muscles. And not everyone even really pays attention to them. So I think ultimately it's even less diagnosed in men.
Whoa, I didn't know that. And does it lead to the same results? So like I've heard you say, with women, you can have like leak if you're peeing and things like that, if you laugh or sneeze and things like that. What would the results be compared to the female? So
just to clarify, for women, it's more often that they're having urge, like gotta go, and need to pee. The leakage often happens, well, it can happen both ways, but more commonly it's because the pelvic floor is weak. When it's tight, sometimes they can leak when they cough or sneeze because those muscles aren't able to squeeze anymore to hold it in when they cough or sneeze. But more often they're feeling gotta go. They're going all the time to the bathroom and they're feeling the strong urge. And the same exact thing can happen to men. I think now that there's more and more anxiety, more and more stress in society, like we're seeing it even more in patients. During COVID, I saw so much of it because people were sitting all the time on those muscles and they weren't moving or walking or using those muscles. And so they developed dysfunction from that. And particularly in women, we'll see it because a lot of young girls will have urine holding behavior. So they'll hold their urine for like all day at school and they're holding. And they're actually clenching those muscles to keep it held. And so then they do that over and over and over and over again for years. For some women, that can be a problem. Or like nurses or even surgeons or teachers who don't get a chance to go to the bathroom very often, hairdressers. Like these are people who will often come to me with these problems because they literally don't have time to pee or they don't make time to pee because they're so busy all the time.
It never dawned on me that it'd be attached to also a profession. Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to go over some lies, homie, that we've been told and that we're going to debunk right now. So if you have too much sex as a woman, you get a loose vagina.
False. 100% false. So as you mentioned, we are so adaptable, right? Your vagina will lengthen and elongate and widen to accommodate a phallus, and it will go back to normal. And the number of partners you have is not going to change that. Now, you can get weaker pelvic floors. It's not from having too much sex. It's usually from having too many babies, having a job where you stand for long periods of time and you're always stressing out those muscles, having a chronic cough, having neurologic conditions. So there's a lot of things or genetics that can cause a weak pelvic floor, which will make it feel less or more capacious, so to speak, but it's not because of how many partners you've had.
So when they say that, the phrase like, oh, she's loose, right? That's kind of like, I think a reference to she's had a lot of sex and so that's made her vagina loose. It's complete bullshit.
It's bullshit.
Fuck yeah, girl. Thank you for saying that. But having babies does loosen it, I assume.
Yes. So having multiple babies, large babies, puts you at higher risk. It doesn't mean that it's always going to happen. It just puts you at higher risk.
So this craziness of like doctors I've heard where they like add a stitch. I actually heard somebody recently, God, I wish I could remember who it was, but they said to me that they heard a story, someone they knew, where the doctor turned around and said to the husband, I did an extra stitch for you.
Oh, that's horrible. That is horrible. No, we don't need extra stitches. They can create so much pain and discomfort. So please, no extra stitches. And if you are a man and you are in the room with your wife when she's getting stitched up, or your partner, do not open your mouth.
Yeah.
Keep it shut.
Yeah, do not. And I'll speak for the woman. God, that's even more horrifying when it's the woman's
like
body.
Just be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you pushed out our baby and I love you. Like that, those are the words that you should say.
Yeah, keep repeating those words.
Yes.
Okay, so what about the lie about how we pop our cherries?
Yes, that's a good one. So the hymen is essentially a band of tissue. It does not cover the entire vaginal canal. If you can think about, that's what people think it is, right? There's like this like film that you pop through, but you wouldn't have a period if you had a film that you didn't pop through until you had sex, right? So there is a band of tissue there, and that is often stretched through a variety of things, through exercise, through horseback riding, through any variety of things. And usually the reason people bleed during their first time of intercourse is because let's be real, the first time people have sex, it's usually not very skilled or people don't know what to do, and there's probably not enough arousal. There's probably too much rush to get to penetration. There's no lubricant, whatever it is, right? And they're stretching and tearing and bleeding. And yes, you can sort of get towards the hymen and cause some discomfort or bleeding because the hymen tissue is more friable, but you're not popping anyone's cherry. Like it's probably already been stretched and pulled long before you were there.
Yeah. So the whole rumors, I mean, there was like a lot of religious people. I'm not sure if it still happens, but I know the Greeks used to, I know the Jewish community do. But it was like, well, if you didn't bleed on your wedding night, it meant that you had already sinned.
Yes, it's horrible. It's so horrible. I mean, there's definitely countries around the world where they'll like check, they'll like have them go to the gynecologist and get checked for the presence of hymenal tissue, which is horrible and sad. And I can't even imagine the number of women that have been wrongfully accused of a whole variety of things that were not true.
Yeah, heartbreaking. Yeah. Okay, so what about the myth that the longer the sex, the better?
So I think that really depends on you, but the average length of sex is about 5 or so minutes. That's penetrative sex. Now, what do you describe as sex, right? That includes foreplay, that includes oral sex, that includes other types of sex that you might be performing. So it's really individual, right? So like some people like this long leisurely experience where they're like having a lot of foreplay. They may have oral, they may have penetrative, they may have anal, they may do a whole host of things. If you're doing anal, make sure you use a different condom or wash off before you go vaginal. But generally like, they would take a whole host of things and they enjoy that. And that's great. But some people like it to be quick and done. And, you know, I got my orgasm. I feel good. We had our connection and I can go to sleep or go on with my day or do whatever it is. And so I think ultimately it's very individualized. Some people like it. Some people don't. Like I've had patients tell me like, I feel like it's too much. It's too long. And my partner wants to do all this because they feel like that's what I need. And so again, got to talk about it.
Going back to the performance thing, whereas if guys think that women want it first, so in fact, do you know the stats on like how long average a woman actually wants it and then how long a guy actually wants it?
So on average, I think it's around 20, 25 minutes women say, but that's again, the whole encounter. And men think it's about 16 minutes. And so again, the reality of penetrative sex is shorter. And for average, again, it can range from 0.1 minute to like 52 minutes based on the studies. But it's really variable, but ultimately like it's about what you feel is sufficient for you and your partner.
Yeah, so it's not about trying to go as long as possible to be a stud in the room because that is just completely false that everyone wants that.
Yes, not everybody wants that.
Yeah. I heard you say that one of the biggest myths out there is that sex should always be mind-blowing. And you said no, like mediocre sex actually is needed and is fine.
Yes, I mean, it's impossible. Are we mind-blowing at everything we do every time? Like, no, we're not. We mess up or things are funny or weird or whatever. Like sex is like a very intimate moment and lots of weird things can happen. You can fart, you can do whatever. Like it may not be always hot and sexy and perfect. And that's okay because it's a part of, again, being vulnerable and intimate with your partner. Things are going to be okay sometimes, and sometimes they're going to be great. But like, if you expect every single sexual encounter to be mind-blowing, you're going to be woefully disappointed. And then you're just going to take that with you into that relationship and be like, man, our sex sucks. But that's just normal. Like, if you're with someone long enough, you are going to have mediocre sex. That's just part of it.
And that's just okay. It doesn't mean that your relationship is in danger or trouble.
Yeah.
I watched a video of yours where you talk about like penis shapes. And so, you know, like kind of the myth, I guess, growing up was always like, no, you know, penises are straight and there's something wrong if there's a bend. And so talk to me about that again, just trying to educate us women that may not know the differences so that we can be prepared.
Yes. So the large number of penises are not straight. The majority of penises have some slight curvature to them, and that's completely normal. And some people will have more curvature due to conditions like Peyronie's disease, which is like you get a plaque on the penis and they actually become curved. Now that's a condition that can be corrected if desired. Now, not everyone wants to correct it and it's not dangerous, but it certainly can be off-putting for the person who has it because they've been looking at their penis their whole life and it now looks different. But if you are on the receiving end of that and that's your partner and it doesn't bother you, please reassure them because they are super stressed about it. Like they've been looking at their penis their whole life. And when they see something change, like they are devastated. This is like a huge problem. So if you are a partner of someone who's going through that, the best thing you can do is support them and tell them like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. We can still have sex. We can still do other things if you can. I mean, sometimes it's so bad that you can't, but for the most part, a lot of times you still can. And so if you can reassure them that you're not bothered by it, it may be helpful.
Thank you for breaking that down. I think that, again, gives us a lot more compassion for guys. Talk to me about the difference between a circumcised penis and a non-circumcised. And I want to touch on this because behind the scene, right, as women, we women talk a lot. Like, I don't think, sometimes my husband walks by when he hears us women all together and he's like, I can't believe the discussions you guys have. He's like, you guys are way more raunchier than us guys. And I was like, I know. And so I actually had a whole conversation with a bunch of girlfriends of mine and we were talking about the difference between a circumcised and non-circumcised. And then I'm going to be honest about like, how do you treat them differently? Like, what are the rules around them? And then for people that may not know, if you don't mind explaining the difference.
Yes. So it's a good question. And, you know, to your point about women talking more about stuff in general, we talk about stuff all the time as women. Guys don't talk about their organs, their genitals, their sex lives, except to boast maybe, like some guys do that, which, you know, whatever, but men don't talk about it. So like it's a real difference in genders, but I will say in terms of circumcision, so a circumcision is when you remove redundant foreskin from the penis. So when they're erect, you probably can't tell the difference. It's more about when they're flaccid where you will see foreskin or skin covering the head of the penis. And I will tell you a lot of women in the US don't see a lot of uncircumcised penises because the US is more likely to circumcise. I'm not going to get into the beliefs behind circumcision, but I will tell you that the data shows that there's no difference in terms of sexual satisfaction, erection, sensation in compared to uncircumcised and circumcised men.
Really? Wow.
So there's actually been very good, rigorous studies that I've looked at, like 40,000 men, of which half were uncircumcised, half were circumcised. They've compiled all these different studies and found that really there's no difference. But ultimately, I think, you know, every individual's experience with circumcision is different. So I don't want to minimize anyone who feels like they may have issues with sensation. But ultimately, for a woman to know is that, yes, there is redundant foreskin. It can be removed. The reason oftentimes people will do it is because there is a lower risk of HPV with uncircumcised penises and basically virtually no risk of penile cancer, which is a very uncommon cancer in general when you get circumcised. So in terms of like, how do you treat them differently? For the man who has the uncircumcised penis, you have to, you know, pull back the foreskin and clean the head of the penis every day when you shower. You don't need soap or anything. You just use water in your finger, but you do need to sort of clean under there. Similarly, women have a clitoral hood. And a lot of us actually don't look at it and pull it back, because women, just like men, can get smegma underneath their, if you've heard of smegma, it's like this cottage cheesy type material that can kind of get underneath the foreskin. Women can get it too underneath the hood of the clitoris.
Whoa.
And it can actually cause discomfort and sometimes even pain. And so, some women may want to actually like gently pull their clitoral hood back if they're having discomfort, to just make sure there's nothing there. They can even get adhesions, and they can stick to the head of the clitoris. So basically, that's the big thing for men with uncircumcised penises, just making sure you have good hygiene so that no inflammation builds up there, because that's essentially the precursor to, for many, many years, if you have inflammation, you can get penile cancer. So that's the big thing in terms of like hygiene, care, health, right? That's the big one. Ultimately, in terms of like how you interact with them sexually, there should be no difference. It's just like, if you see one, don't be like, it's, I guess don't be like, just be like, okay, that's a variation on normal, right? And that's again, like you said, in the US, you can probably go with many partners and not find an uncircumcised penis. And so it can be alarming for some people, but like the worst thing you want to do is like push someone to get a circumcision if they don't want to, because that is not something that's mandatory or required. And if someone's happy with their uncircumcised penis, please don't ever push them to do so, unless they're having infections, recurrent infections, or pain because of the foreskin.
And then in regards to this, you said the sensitivity is the same, but then as a woman, I'm just going to, if I can be a bit graphic for a second, in treating it, if you're like, playing with it, do you have to be more sensitive to it? Like, to be a bit more gentle? Or is it like, no, it's exactly the same. Women don't have to worry. It's literally no worry.
So the most nerve endings on the penis that have a lot of sensation is right under the corona. So the ridge of the penis, like of the head, that's where most of the nerve endings are. But the foreskin is like much more than that. And the nerve endings on the foreskin are just like the tip of your finger. So they actually have less nerve endings than the tip of your finger. So it's really more so like they're very sensitive around the ridge of the head, the glands, and the ridge of the head. That's a very sensitive area for men. But the foreskin itself, the majority of the foreskin is just like your finger.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for breaking that down. For anyone listening, it's one of these things that, like, if you don't have your girlfriends to just ask, or, obviously I'm very fortunate to be able to sit in front of someone like you and ask these questions. So hopefully that brought value to people, just in case. We've gone over so many facts and datas and myths and stuff. What do you think is like the biggest misconception right now out there that's actually setting people up wrong to have intimacy and build their relationship?
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 Steps to Becoming Confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
I think the biggest misconception is that sex is like what you see on porn. And I think I have no problem with people watching pornography in a healthy way, but I think when people watch it, especially younger kids, now we know that it's much more difficult to get access to porn, right? Kids can look at their friend's phone or whatever, and we're finding the average age of a boy getting exposed, and even girls, is like 8.
Whoa!
Yeah. So really, really young. And so I've been open about this. I talked to my son about what he might see and if he has questions about it, that he should ask me, and that this is a movie and it's not true life. It's not real life. It's not what real life is like. And so that, and if he feels like this compulsion to watch it over and over again, to please talk to me, because that's not safe. And so I think ultimately that's what concerns me, is that young men are seeing this as a representation of what sex should be like and what they should perform like and what their partner should react like. And that's not reality. And so when they go to have their first sexual encounter, it's nothing like that. And then they're even more insecure, and they're bringing that, into their next encounter or whatever. And so it's causing a lot of issues in people who really can't see that separation because their brain's not fully developed yet, and they can't tell the difference.
Oh my God, what do you think that's teaching young women?
I mean, you know, there have been like, I think Billie Eilish has been like open about her porn addiction.
Oh,
like
has she?
there's been some people who really have found themselves getting, you know, like really addicted to porn. And not everyone does. And it's actually a small subset of people that do. So I want to be clear, like, I don't have a problem with porn. I think it's safe to watch if you're, you know, you can separate the distinction between reality and
Is that what you mean when you said earlier, healthy?
Yeah, and that you're not, again, doing it at the detriment of like spending time with your partner, doing normal things, being productive, or being with your partner like intimately. And so as long as it's not conflicting with those things and you're using it for entertainment, it's totally fine. But again, there's that blurred line where you don't know if it's entertainment versus is it real? Is it true life? And is this what real life is like? Where I think really the damage comes in.
And I'm just thinking also like from a young girl's like confidence and self-esteem. Like if we're seeing these acts where women are just like, oh, they're so confident, they're just flinging their body around. Is that making women either less confident, do you think? Or is that actually making them more, more sexual?
I think it depends. I think one is like, oftentimes they'll be like, why is my body not reacting like that? Why am I not orgasming immediately after penetration, right? Like why does it not look like that? And I think that's the bigger problem. And sure, it's good to be exposed to a variety of things, and like maybe you'll find something you find interesting that you would not have otherwise. And maybe there is some sexual exploration there, but I think more of that comes from self-exploration than watching pornography. And women tend to watch pornography less. They tend to listen to erotica more than they'll watch pornography.
But how does that then echo into potential relationships? So like how is porn and porn addiction and how accessible and easy it is at such a young age, how is that impacting relationships? Because I'm definitely hearing now, especially from the young guys, there seems to be a sex recession. And growing up for me, it was, you know, women try to hold back and, you know, guys were always approaching. But now it seems like guys are actually specifically choosing to not have sex. So what is happening to the world? How do you think that then echoes into relationships as people start to go from, you know, maybe the first date to then seeking a full-time relationship?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors. So one, and again, this is not necessarily proven in data. This is sort of like my speculation. But I think one, with COVID, there became a real heightened awareness of infectious disease. So people are nervous about that. I think two, yes, the accessibility of porn makes it seem like you can have access to sex, even though it's not you having sex, very easily without having to go to approach a woman, get rejected potentially, and you know, continue that process. Whereas when we were younger, like that was the only way you were going to get sex. Even to watch porn, you had to find a VCR and a tape, or you had to find a magazine, right? Like, and you had to hide it somewhere. You had to find a room where nobody was to like actually participate in looking at those things. Whereas now it's just like too accessible. And so I think ultimately, yes, that's part of it. I think there's also just changes in gender roles potentially, whereas like, you know, they may not know how to approach a woman in today's society because it's definitely evolving, and it's sort of like difficult for like the dads don't know how to counsel their sons on how to like approach a woman because it's so different than the way they used to approach women now and how receptive women will be. So I think there's a lot of factors in terms of that, and hopefully it will equilibrate, you know, over time as people start realizing that there is this issue and that for the sake of society, we need to continue having sex and having babies, right? I will just add that I think women, we tend to like just take a lot of stress and we don't actually seek help when we need to. A lot of women with bladder issues like leakage, prolapse, sexual pain, like pain with sex, all of those things, decreased desire. And for years, it will go on for 10, 15, 20 years before they finally seek help. Because one, they're too busy taking care of everyone else. They don't make themselves a priority. They just say, it's okay, I can just live like this. I'll get around to it. But then you realize like so many years of your life are gone. And so it's so important to take the next step and seek help if you are struggling. Like if you're leaking and you don't like it, see a doctor. If you're having issues with your sex life and you don't like it, see a doctor. If you feel like you're going through menopause and you don't like how you feel, like go see a doctor. There's so many things that we can do to help you to get your quality of life better. And there's no reason to suffer in silence. And, you know, worst case scenario, you don't click with that person, don't give up. Like you may see someone and not like them or feel like their information doesn't jive with you, that doesn't mean it wasn't meant to be. It just means that you didn't like that one person. So move on and see someone else. We're so lucky in the United States that you can you can see whoever you want. There's no gatekeepers to seeing a doctor, seeing a specialist of some kind to get help.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of women that I know and, my audience have said that they do sometimes, right? I'm going to go get the courage to go to the doctor. And the doctor turns around and goes, there's nothing wrong with you, you're normal, or it's just like, are you sure it's not in your head? And so you end up, I'm hearing more and more about how some doctors, of course, not everybody, can gaslight you into
absolutely.
Thinking that, no, you're totally normal, when actually your body is screaming that something is wrong.
100%. And we did a study looking at Reddit threads on low libido, and for women in particular, and so many women, one of the biggest themes was that they went to the doctor and they got dismissed. And they were on these medications that are clearly linked with low libido, but nobody even picked it up. People do have their areas of expertise. So sometimes you might go, all you have access to is the urologist in your neighborhood, and they may not know anything about sexual dysfunction, or the gynecologist may not know anything about menopause or not want to treat it or whatever it is. And I think the thing is, don't feel like that's the end of the road. And not all doctors are the same. Not all people are the same. And thank God for the internet, because you can actually go on and find quality education now. And it's kind of difficult to find quality education, but really sort of doing your own vetting. Are these people giving quality content? Are they giving resources? Are they giving references to the studies they're talking about? And then okay, they're actually taking their data from real sources. They're giving human studies, human data. They're telling you what we know. And for example, if my patient comes to me with an issue and they're like, I really don't want to take medication, I'm still going to work with them to get them to where they want to be. I may try to educate them on what these medications do and how they could help them, but I'm never going to push anyone to do that. And if I don't know, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm going to say, I don't know. And, this is your experience. It's super important. And hopefully I will help you find someone who can help you with that issue. And so I think that's really the key, is not feeling they may say you're physiologically, everything is fine. Your blood work looks fine. Your body looks fine. That doesn't mean that everything is fine. Right. And so you are still experiencing something that's real and is worthy of attention.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Don't dismiss your body. Don't ignore it. I did it for so long. I was just listening blindly to the doctors. And so they were like, oh no, take this pill. I was so eager to find the solve that I would just listen blindly, even if my body was saying something opposite. So how do you know then the difference between what your body needs then and then what a doctor is telling you? Because I always find this hard, because it's you've got the education, you may not have then had the experience in this thing, but if they're saying you're normal, how do you pass the difference between how you're feeling and what the doctor's actually telling you?
Well, I think the issue is, and it happens a lot, there's plenty of things we don't know. We're not perfect, right?
Yeah.
So I will have a patient, I've had patients come in who've got pain in their flank, for example. And I'll be like, well, I did your CT scan. There's nothing there. There's nothing on your exam. It doesn't mean that you're not experiencing pain. It just means that I can't find a reason for that pain that's urologic in nature. Now, could it be muscle pain? Could it be that your body is telling you you have pain there, but it's actually stress or something else? I don't know. But ultimately, I think just knowing that your experience of your body is real. It's completely real. Yes, we can rule out things. That's what we can definitely do as doctors. I can definitely say there is no kidney stone causing this pain. I can definitely say that there is no mass in your vagina. I can definitely say, right, that your pelvic floor muscles today on this exam seem normal. But I can't tell you what your experience is day to day.
Everyone needs a doctor like you, Rena Malik.
Thank you.
Where can people find you and all the amazing things you're doing? Your videos are freaking fire. You are just literally changing the world with the education that you're giving. So where can people go to follow you?
Yes, so they can follow me on any social media platform at Rena Malik MD, but YouTube is where most of my videos are. I also have a podcast there called the Rena Malik MD podcast. And if you want to see me as a patient, I'm in Newport Beach and Beverly Hills. So you can make an appointment to see me, or virtually. I have 8 states I'm licensed in.
Wow.
So happy to see you.
If you want to learn how to take control of your life, take control of your health, naturally balance your hormones, and manage your emotions, then keep watching. What on earth can we do? Because I'm always just trying to just address the reality of humans and who we are as, basically how we act. So when we find moments of we're tired, I understand that, or frustrated, down, hungry, doing exactly what you just said is beautiful. The problem is, as humans, we do naturally do the opposite, right? So it's like the more tired we're feeling, the more stressed we're feeling, the more down or depressed we're feeling, we're not going for the foods that actually will help us get back on track. We are now pushed or drawn towards the things that actually end up keeping us there or like really holding us back.
Yeah, so I always think of this saying that says, motivation follows the action, right? So we sometimes wait to feel motivated, inspired to do something, to go to the gym, to eat healthy. But really, if you think about it from this gut bacterial perspective, once you start to make the changes over 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, now these gut bacteria, they like those foods. They're going to ask you for more. They're going to help you on your journey. You're going to get more motivated to eat that way, to act that way. And similarly with exercise, you force yourself the first couple of days and all of a sudden you start to get the endorphin release. You start to get the dopamine release. You start to crave it. So motivation actually followed the action. So when you're feeling down, I always say this to myself, to people I work with, just move in the direction of change. So just go to the gym for a few minutes. Just pick one healthy meal. You'll see as you start to make those decisions, the motivation follows.
Yeah, that's so good. But what is the thing that ends up keeping people stuck there though, right? Because like I so understand there's a massive gap between everything we're saying of knowing and then doing. And a big part of it is that we're just, especially, in fact, you say in your book, like as women, we do have a harder time with addiction to food, with food issues. I'm just going to call a spade, right?
It is such a powerful thing. And it is a place that, so many of us women end up being in because food triggers emotions. And sometimes what we realize as we're growing up is that food is creating good emotions for us, right? So we eat because it raises our serotonin levels. Like we feel better about ourselves and nothing else we're doing is making us feel better. And so we reach for the one thing we know that will make us feel better. And so that's where food addiction lies, is that, you come home after a long day, and this happens to all of us. We are exhausted and you just don't know what to do to soothe yourself. Because you're just so tired. You just want to rest. But one thing you can rely on that will always soothe you and make you feel better is that junk food, that cookie, that ice cream, that glass of wine. And so many of us know, hey, this works every time. And that's why I'm spreading this knowledge, because, Lisa, I think that we are in a state in this world of total loss of control of our mood. We are more anxious than ever. 1 in 5 adolescents has depression or anxiety, and 1 in 10 adults. This is a massive epidemic. I mean, we have epidemics, but this is the real massive epidemic happening right now. And we need to know how to address this. Like, we don't understand how to control our mood, how to soothe ourselves, how to create a positive dopamine response. We are going to be stuck just with the defaults. And the defaults that are trying to control our mood want us to be addicted to, TikTok, to food, to alcohol, to drugs, to gambling. And we choose those routes because we don't know any better. So when you recognize that, hey, there may be a negative craving here, you can substitute it with positive craving, like positive dopamine releasing foods, positive dopamine releasing activities. So we know, for example, people always say, when you're in a bad mood, exercise. When you're in a bad mood, spend some time with a loved one. When you're in a bad mood, get sunshine. And the reason is that when you get a little bit of burst of dopamine, and when you recognize that these are options too, then you can make better choices. Because now I know that instead of going deep into my freezer and taking out all the favorite junk food there, I could maybe instead go for a walk outside. Maybe instead I spend some time with my dog, or call a loved one. I do something that raises my dopamine levels, my serotonin levels. Like maybe I do something that's really, really nice for someone else. That actually raises our own happiness, right? So knowing this information can help you change your mood, and then can help you rewire so that next time when it happens, you may not go down the negative path. Your mood is under your control. What you crave is under your control. Because I grew up, thinking that what I craved was just, circumstances. My mood, it was just based on luck. And, if I wanted a better mood, hopefully my life will be better, and then my mood will be better. I had no idea that you could do things to control your mood, to control your cravings, to feel more in control when you're out of control. Like, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, even as you're saying, right, it's like, oh, that person was mean to me, the other person was really rude. And it's like, let's face it, depending on what mood you're in, that's either going to bother you, or literally you probably laughed when you're in a good mood, right?
Absolutely. And that's why you need to know, hey, why am I in a bad mood? One, what can I do myself? How can I take control of this situation so that I can be happy? Because we all know, I tell this story all the time, we all know that happiness is a state of mind. I went to the Costa Rican jungle, and we went to this very rural area where they were playing soccer, which they call football, right? And I kept asking our tour guide, I said to him, well, do you guys miss that you don't have, iPhones? Do you miss that, you're not able to travel the world? Do you miss that you don't have, TV? Do you miss? And he goes, yeah, I know about all this stuff. I don't miss it at all. He's like, I got great friends. I work out. I have a great job. And I kept thinking, and it really opened my eyes to think, there's so many people who are so happy around the world without all the stuff. And then there are people who have all the stuff and all the relationship and the money and the power, and they're so unhappy. It's really inside. It's your inside. It's how you take this information and use it for yourself. Some people intuitively learn that, and other people don't know. I didn't have a roadmap. And when I learned, hey, I can eat foods to boost my dopamine, I can eat foods to boost my serotonin, I can recognize the negative dopamine control and switch it to something positive, I will be happier. And I can teach things to other people to also get them out of a dark place or a hole where they think that, oh, my life just sucks. And teach them, hey, there are things you can do.
Oh, I love that. And in fact, as you were talking, I was like, yeah, we put so much time and energy into getting the perfect house, the perfect career, the perfect, the money, the perfect relationship, blah, blah, blah. And in fact, if we're actually concentrating on putting that time and energy into what can I do to my body, what can I eat, how can I, really fuel myself so that I can feel happy to go after these things, I think that becomes we're now putting the horse before the cart again.
Yeah. I mean, the best relationship you can ever have is the relationship with yourself, with your internal body, right? If you understand what makes you happy, what you can do to change your mood from being anxious to flip the switch, then you have the power. Then you will never be in a bad place. I know now, no matter how bad my life is, no matter what happens to my business, no matter what happens around me, I know I can control my happiness, and that's a really beautiful thing.
I love that. All right, so as we're going through the hormones and how we're really navigating, you've been so beautifully eloquent in being able to break these down. And so we mentioned ghrelin at the beginning. So how on earth do we start to now navigate our ghrelin hormone? How do we, I'm going to say manipulate just because I love that word. But how do we manipulate our ghrelins to make them think that we're full?
Okay, biggest thing is get out of the diet culture. This restriction, all it's doing is making your ghrelin levels rise, making your thoughts get preoccupied with food, and making you always just hungry. And like, what are you hungry for? This is the worst thing about our diet. So when the next time, if someone's watching this, the next time someone says, hey, go on this diet with me, and this diet happens to mean that you don't eat a lot of food and you're restricting yourself and you're not eating anything for many days, you're basically putting yourself in that ghrelin cycle. So you really want to start to be full. Start to eat things that actually make you feel full and satisfied. So some things like high volume food, high water foods, foods in their natural state. So one of the biggest tips I give to women is start to change from an processed version of that food and make it at home. The studies show over and over and over again, no matter how you make it, what ingredients you put in it at home, it is better than the frozen version, than the version you get from the fast food. And processed food does not make you satiated. It's created to keep you hungry, to keep those ghrelin levels high, so you would eat more.
Yeah.
Okay? So eating foods that are high in water means like vegetables and fruits and things that are in their natural state. In their natural state, all of these foods hold a lot of volume, a lot of water. But when you strip down the fiber, you take out the water and you put it in a bag and, label and make it red and put all these flavors in it, then
Put a cartoon character on the front.
yes, and then you don't know whether you're full or not. And your ghrelin levels continue to be high, your leptin levels continue to be low. And so that's one of the biggest tricks, is really to get out of the diet culture. And then the second one is to stop eating so much processed food. Third one is to cook at home. And the fourth one is one that I kind of keep mentioning, is the outdoors, the sunlight, the circadian rhythms. We now know that our whole bodies, all of our hormones work with input from the sun. And when you get outdoor, it doesn't need to be sunny, bright and sunny, it just needs to be outdoor light. It signals to our brain to be more satisfied, to have better leptin, to have raise the alpha MSH, which lowers the ghrelin. So if you're trying to figure out, all right, what can I do today, right now? Go out for a walk every day this week for 20 minutes. Get natural light and see how it changes what you crave and how hungry you are.
And for people listening, just to be clear, even if it's like raining, take an umbrella is better than staying indoors, right?
Absolutely. So even on an overcast day,
Right.
you still get more light, 10 times more light than you do indoors. So being outdoors is key. If for people who write to me all the time, because I talk about this all the time on social media, and I say there are now inexpensive lights called happy lights on Amazon, at your local store, that mimic sunlight. Okay, you hold it 12 inches from your face about 20 minutes a day, and it is as powerful as an SSRI, which is the antidepressants that we use today.
It's called a happy light?
Yes.
Holy crap. See, every time you come here, girl, you just blow my mind. I'm so going to be getting one of these happy lights. That's amazing. I love
it rivals
this shit.
antidepressants in studies. Seasonal affective disorder, for example, is a huge thing in the wintertime. And people don't realize that, hey, you can go outside even when it's not sunny. You can get a happy light. You can, do things that are going to raise your mood even when the sun is setting early.
And for people to really hear how powerful what you're saying is, there was studies done, I think, over people that were doing like night shifts.
Yes.
And the rate of depression in night shift workers was just insane.
Yeah, it was the rate of depression when they simulated night shift work went up to about 30%. And the anxiety shot up. And what we realized is our circadian rhythms run our mood and our hormones. And guess what? When I was talking about that gut bacteria, they work on circadian rhythms also. So even though our gut bacteria are deep into our bowels, they need circadian rhythm input too. So going and getting natural sun is a non-negotiable in my mind to be able to do this, controlling your mood and your cravings. get natural light 20 minutes minimum every single day.
Oh my God, it's so damn powerful. Like when I heard that, I was like, wow. Now to ignore the fact if you stay in for too many days, it's like, it is a beautiful way of having a like a red flag, right?
Yes,
Where it's like,
yes.
oh, I've spent 2 days indoors. Now at least I know I'm going to potentially start to feel X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I feel like, when you understand that, hey, my mood is feeling kind of low lately, and now you have all these tools. Hey, I'm going to eat these foods. I'm going to go get sunlight. I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to surround myself with positive people. Maybe I'm going to not go to that site that keeps bringing me down. Those are the things, those powerful things you could do. I mean, we talked about dopamine promoting foods, but you want to talk about serotonin promoting
Hells
foods?
yeah.
Yeah. So just like you can boost dopamine through your gut bacteria, you can also boost serotonin. And serotonin is our happy hormone. So remember how I told you dopamine is our, make me move and motivated. It's the molecule of more. It's the one that wants you craving more and more. It's the one that keeps you in that bad relationship. It keeps you stuck with that alcohol or that food addiction. Serotonin is your blissed out happy hormone, okay? It's your chill happy hormone. It's the one you want when, you often feel when you're satisfied, when you're cuddling, when you're in love. It's the one you want at the end of the day to relax. That's what you're looking for. So serotonin promoting foods are high in tryptophan. So people think about turkey or whatever, but there's many other high tryptophan foods. Again, there's a huge like beans and tofu and nuts, and tryptophan is found in many, many different foods. And what you want to do is you want to mix the tryptophan foods with a carbohydrate. So a sweet potato or vegetable, even vegetables have carbohydrates, rice, or because it helps create more serotonin in your brain. And a lot of people feel like it will help them relax and go to sleep. So if you're trying to time, say you want to time your meals and you want to say, all right, what am I going to eat in the morning? You're going to have that dopamine rich, protein rich food in the morning. And then in the evening, when you want to relax, you want to have the blissed out kind of relaxing promoting of the melatonin, which also is closely related to serotonin, is you want to have the tryptophan rich foods along with carbohydrates so that you feel satisfied. And often that will help you get a better night's sleep.
And the carbs is a satisfied part? Like what if you don't
Yes.
have it with carbs? What's the difference?
So carbs is not necessarily, doesn't mean that it has to be chips or crackers. What I mean by carbs is sweet potato or a healthy vegetable. I mean, almost everything, beans, all has a little bit of carbs. So the healthy carbs will help that tryptophan turn into serotonin.
And if you didn't have then the carbs, you just had the tryptophan by itself, would it still have that?
It would still, there's still other things you can do. So if you want to eat just, high tryptophan food, you can have high B6 foods. So high B6 foods can also help with that serotonin release. So serotonin often is one of those hormones that you want to feel happiness and kind of that blissed out feeling. And so those foods at the end of the day, those activities at the end of the day are going to be the ones that you want to be doing. Okay. And that's the ones that's going to promote some relaxation and sleep.
So what other ones did you say have it? So obviously turkey, because everyone's like, oh, after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Well, what are the other things?
Nuts. Actually, nuts have tryptophan.
Any nuts?
Tofu. Yes. Actually, nuts in general have good tryptophan. Tofu. There's even weird things like pineapple and, lots of interesting ways to boost your serotonin. Cherries. There are so many cool ways that you can kind of boost your. I have a whole list of things that you could be eating, a comprehensive list of foods that are high in B6, that are high in tryptophan, that you could be eating to raise your serotonin, whether it's the beginning of the day, middle of the day, or end of the day. But when you want to have more of that blissed out feeling, and there are activities that we can be doing to raise our serotonin levels as well. There are so many things like being with positive people. So we don't talk enough about how our mood is controlled by the people we spend time with, right? So we know that saying that you're a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Your mood is also a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're around people who are kind of Debbie Downers, your serotonin levels are also going to kind of be lower, right? You're around people who are super happy, you're going to start to be super happy. So you want to remember to boost your serotonin through the people you spend time with, the relationships you have. A lot of people live with relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship, friendships, or family, where it's not serving them. It's not serving their mood. It's not serving their life. Yet they feel like, oh, well, I'm not allowed to change this. No, you are allowed to change it. You can create a situation that can make you happier by surrounding yourself with those people.
I can't remember if we spoke about this last time, but isn't it now there are studies that are showing that your gut bacteria is also starting to be molded by the people that you hang around with?
Yes.
This is insane.
Yes.
It seems like magic fairy tale to
Yes.
me until you start to go, okay, but do you understand that when women hang out with each other enough, right, college roommates,
Yes.
their cycle starts to actually match up.
Yes.
I can't fucking explain it. Maybe you can.
Yeah, I know it's pheromones, and it's there's so much that changes. It's not. I used to think that too. I'm like, this is just woo woo. What, the energy of someone change. But then when I saw the science behind it, I'm like, no, you actually can change the microbiome of someone by spending time with them. In fact, they showed that you can be related to someone, but your microbiome will still be closer to the people that you spend the most time with than your genetic relative.
Dude, that's so powerful.
It's so
I love
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, oh, I want to change my, my gut biome. Who do I need to hang out with?
Exactly. You should be thinking that.
Yeah.
You should be like, hey, I'm feeling kind of
powerful.
down lately, or I'm feeling like my health is not the best, or my performance is not the best. Hang out with people who bring it up. Now, of course, there are people who are going to give you different things. There are going to be people who are great at athletics. There's going to be people who are just loving people. There's going to be people who motivate you in different ways. But start surrounding yourself with those people so that you can start to actively change your own microbiome makeup. It's actually called psychobiotics. They are the bacteria that change your psyche. So they've already done studies where they give psychobiotic bacteria to people who are anxious or depressed. And they found that it works best in conjunction with medications right now. We have not found the right milieu to actually completely replace medications. Right. That is what we're working on, is saying, how do we use this to powerfully change people's mood? And so we know now, yes, fermented food, probiotic food will change your mood in a positive way. So that's something I say to people, game changer. If you look, there's a whole chapter in here where I talk about the foods that will change your mood, the categories that you want to include every single day, every single week in your diet to actually start to change this so that you can be in control. If we know psychobiotic bacteria exist and we have proof of it, then why aren't we taking advantage of that?
Oh, that is literally my question. Why aren't we?
Yeah, like, why aren't we eating these things all the time? Why aren't the smart entrepreneurs who are listening to this saying, oh yeah, why don't I make more of the stuff that has polyphenols, the stuff that has fermented foods? Because now people are going to want to buy that because now they know how to boost their mood.
Yeah, God, it's so damn powerful. But going back to the connection between who you're surrounding yourself with and then your gut bacteria, like I really want to make sure that people hear how powerful that is, because we very much talk about being around positive people, but we don't necessarily think about how it's actually impacting our physiology, so that like we can literally be around these people, and then when we're by ourselves, it still has like a beautiful echo effect, right?
Yeah, literally, you can transplant the gut bacteria from someone who is really having a lot of mental health issues. and you can transplant that into another person, and that person will get all the mental health problems of the donor. It is that powerful. We've seen it in study after study. They know now that depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, and positive mood, all of those can differ between the microbiomes, and you can actually transplant that mood from one person to the other without even going near their brain.
This is fascinating. So that's why I really want to like now even emphasize more and go a little deeper on the gut bacteria thing, because there are foods that can feed the gut that then gives your gut a certain bacteria.
Yeah.
So that's super powerful. I think that's been very clear. Thank you. You've like laid out a lot of things that we can eat and stuff and things that we can do. But then there's that next step of what we do based on what gut bacteria we have. So I've even heard you say, depending on your gut bacteria, there are some people that are going to be way more hungry all the time than people with different gut bacteria. So now I'm like, oh my God, this is that next added layer of this discussion of like, what can we now start to eat? And what are the gut bacteria where it's like, oh, Dr. Amy actually has way more appetite, way more hunger levels because of the bacteria in her gut. That's fascinating.
Isn't that crazy? So the way I think about it is that there is these soldiers that live in our body. So they're actually living beings, and they have personalities, they have needs, and they like certain foods, and they want friends. So friends are like diversity. They want lots of different types of, you can't just have an army with just one type of person. You want the Navy, you want the Air Force, you want a big, diverse group to fight what they need to fight. And you want to be healthy, but 97% of Americans are starving their gut bacteria. They don't know, one, that they exist, and they're not feeding it anything that they can eat. And so what we're realizing now is that, hey, we've now discovered the science, but the way our diets and lifestyles are structured, we are starving them to death. We are creating such a hostile environment that they're dying. We are taking foods and medications to kill them. And now we're realizing, oh, wait, no wonder our depression rates are skyrocketing. No wonder anxiety is skyrocketing. We can't focus, why we have health problems, inflammation. This comes because we've been ravaging this like ecosystem of soldiers that live there that are fighting for us, that are talking to our immune system and helping you fight bacteria, diseases, and cancer. And we are killing them. So what I think we have to understand is, okay, there are soldiers that need to eat, they need to rest, they have preferences, and we need to feed them what they want to eat. And if I told you the simple things that they need to survive, you'll be like, I can't believe that 97% of Americans don't even get that. But it's so simple, yet it's not done.
So what are the simple things?
Yeah, so very, very, very simple things that the gut bacteria love. They love fiber. They feel like, everything else gets digested, but the fiber stays until the lower colon, which is where they live, right? So what we did in America and the modern world is we stripped out the fiber to make it easy to digest and make it easy for us to eat foods and get a big dopamine release, like, bread and cereals and candies. That all used to be covered in fiber. Fruit is sugar, but it's covered with fiber, right? Vegetables can give you that dopamine release, but they are covered in fiber. And so what America has done is made it a fiberless society. And what we're doing is we're eating food-like substances that are like food, but they're devoid of fiber. So fiber is number one. Number two is polyphenols. So polyphenols are this amazing chemical that's in foods that makes them brightly colored. So the way I think about polyphenol is like the blueberries and the raspberries and the spices like turmeric and all the things that are really brightly colored naturally. they have polyphenols, and polyphenols have magical properties, and the gut bacteria love polyphenols. So that's one of their favorite foods. And they love glucosinolates. So glucosinolates are another category. This is all laid out in the book. Glucosinolates are a category of like broccoli and cabbage, and they have these beautiful sulfur compounds that help us fight off cancer, that help us fight off heart disease, that help us stay lean and healthy. And these things are another favorite food for the gut bacteria. Then the gut bacteria love omega-3 fatty acids. So we hear about omega-3 fatty acids in like fish oil, but it's also found in algae oil. And omega-3s are some of the favorite foods. So now we have glucosinolates, polyphenols, fiberful foods, omega-3s. These are all amazing things that the gut bacteria love. And then you add in fermented food, and you add in certain amino acids, like I said, like the tyrosine and the tryptophan. The gut bacteria love those things. They get so happy that they start to release dopamine and serotonin. And so you eat a diet full of these things that easily found at the grocery store, yet none of us eat this regularly, because when you look at the studies, 97% of people are not eating these foods. So it's simple, but it's not done. So feeding your gut bacteria, keeping them happy, growing more of them, bringing more diversity to it is our way out of this huge epidemic that we've created for ourselves.
Dude, that was so damn tactical. I love it. Thank you so much. And one thing I want to make sure that we also add to everything you just laid out, like you've just laid out exactly what should ideally be on our plate, so that we can stop really just like going after those cravings, never feeling like satiated, like never really feeling satisfied. I love that. The other little tactics that I think go along with that you talk in your book that's so powerful is like when you're doing all this, I know a lot of people have issues with like overeating. So you even say just the color of your plate or bowl will make a difference. So now that you've given us all the food that we need to eat, talk to me about the bloody color of the plate and bowl, why that makes a difference. And then again, knowing these things allows us to go, okay, I used to use an orange plate and now I'm going to use a white plate. And so yeah, talk to me about that.
I think there's so many things we can do. So when you're at a wedding, a buffet, or a place where you're going to be choosing from a huge array of foods, it's very easy to kind of go there and just eat everything, right? So one of the tactics that I give to people is choose your food wisely and the order that you're eating it. So they found in studies that when you eat a soup or a salad first, before you go for the dessert or the sweet or the very, very fatty or processed food, you have a better chance of getting those signals, those leptin signals of being satiated. So have your soup, have your salad, relax, like the food is going to be there, right? And then you have your protein, which is going to start to satisfy that, dopamine receptors. You have the fiber from the vegetables, which your gut bacteria loves. And then at the end, you have your sweet dessert or your treat, whether it's a salty treat or sweet treat. Wait till the end. And what you do by ordering it that way is you start to tell your brain, hey, we're eating the amino acids that you're eating from the protein-rich food are telling your brain like, I'm satisfied. And so by the time you get to the not so healthy food, the processed food that you've been waiting to eat, you won't go crazy and your own body will tell you you're full.
Yeah, I love that.
And the plate, they found that people who eat red, like say sauce, red things on a red plate end up eating more. So if you've ever seen colored plates, they can change how you actually get portion sizes. So if you're at a place and they have red plates and you're going to be eating pasta, choose a different colored plate to actually see. Maybe it's a process of seeing the differentiation between the color of the food and the plate. but it can help you. And also remember the size of your plate matters. And this is something I had heard a long time ago and I really didn't believe it. But the bigger your plate, the more you end up eating because your brain doesn't realize that it's a lot bigger. And so if you want to start to be a little more satiated, start to really think, like, do I need this humongous plate? Do I need these humongous portions? Maybe I take a smaller plate. And maybe I do this tactic where I eat the soup first, I eat the salad first and take my time. And I think it helps a lot of people when they're at parties and they're at social events to be able to have tactics that they know that can help their own body give them the right signals.
Yeah. So when I read that in your book, I was like, that's fascinating about the red plate and then the tomato sauce. And I did wonder if it was because the colors bleed into each other.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what happened.
It reminds me of a study that I read. Now, this is years ago, but it was something about if you have a problem with overeating in general, that blue plates actually help.
Yes.
And I never really understood why, but to your point, there's no blue foods.
Yes.
So maybe now the reason why blue plate helps is because it can't hide anything.
Yeah, it can. And they even showed like, drinks, different colors of different drinks. You drink more when it's colored in a certain way. And it just made me think like, think about all of these things that these companies have been testing and they know, I'll just give you an example, Doritos, right? It's a little bit salty, it's a little bit sweet. It's a crunchy and it's a little bit, like it's got every flavor that you can think of in your mind is in one food. And it's made in a way where you can eat the whole bag and you still won't get that signal from your brain because they know how to manipulate the taste that it's not going to trigger that leptin release. And so you end up eating the whole bag and not feeling satisfied.
So if we have a dopamine, like we're looking for that dopamine rush, depending on what, do we have like specific dopamine rushes? So would it be like, I'm having a dopamine rush for salt?
Yes.
And so now basically what Doritos are doing is like, I got you.
Yes. So remember I told you some things give you a machine gun release of dopamine?
Yeah.
That's our machine gun. And what they know is they know that if you get a huge hit, you're more likely to come back for it. So, when you eat an orange, and I tell my kids this all the time because I have 2 kids. I told you they're teenagers and preteens and I get it. If someone gives you an orange and you have to peel the orange, it's got all this fiber in it and you got to eat that. But it feels good. You eat it, their dopamine receptors light up, right? It's like little sparkles. When you take an orange soda, no peel, just plain sugar, you drink it, you get a dopamine light show. So then you wonder, like Coke and Pepsi, all these sodas, all these drinks, all these candies. Of course, the child, the next time they're offered, hey, do you want this orange or you want this orange soda? What are they going to pick? The survival mechanisms in your body say, oh, no, go for the thing that lit my whole brain up because I like that thing. So that's how strong dopamine can be to training. And so a lot of us, I know myself too, you have these addictions because you started to feel that dopamine rush. And maybe you were so good, you didn't have a lot of alcohol when you were young, you didn't have a lot of drugs, or you've cleaned up your whole life. But this part of your life, you have not cleaned up. Your brain still lights up with those same things and you can't control yourself around it. So that's the power. I'm saying, okay, recognize that. Say, instead, I'm going to have that orange. I'm going to have orange. I'm going to get that little bit of dopamine rush. And then I'm going to do a second thing that gives me a little bit of dopamine rush and keep it going for the whole day rather than getting that spike and then the crash and then I'm out trying to get more of it.
Yeah, God. And then even as you're saying about the orange compared to like the orange soda, that I think everyone will be like, yeah, we know it's not the same. But it's the things that people trick you into thinking, like, this is freshly squeezed orange juice. So you're like, oh, it's the same.
Yeah.
But what you don't realize is there's 1,000 more ingredients in this freshly squeezed orange juice that now is having the negative effect that you're looking for the positive effect.
Yeah, the biggest thing I say in the book is to cut down the number of ultra processed foods. So people are always like, what is an ultra processed food? It is exactly what you define. It is a food that contains ingredients that could never be recreated in a kitchen. Not your kitchen, not anyone's kitchen. It's got stuff that's only chemicals.
If you can't pronounce it, that should also be another sign.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't get the ingredients to recreate, even if you have to order them from Amazon, exotic places, there's no way you could even ever recreate that chip or that soda or that dessert. That's ultra processed. And that's the worst kind of food that you could be eating for your long-term happiness. It will give you short-term dopamine hits, serotonin, oxytocin, but long-term, for every 10% increased processed food that you have in your diet, this ultra processed food, there's a jump of depression by 21%.
Whoa!
For every
21%?
21%. You are, so what we do is in our lives, most of us are having 60% ultra processed foods, and teenagers, adolescents are usually having about 70% ultra processed food. Our grocery stores are 75% ultra processed. Okay, so when you go in the grocery store, most of the food that's there now is ultra processed. And so to get around this, to understand the power of, yeah, we can control our mood, it's almost like we're going in an uphill battle. We're battling against all the forces around us, the video games, the gambling, you know, the dating sites, all of these are trying to light up our brain. And what we're trying to say is, I'm trying to say to you is, hey, pull back, learn this, and start to control your mood. Start to navigate through that, through those landmines in the grocery store, through the landmines of social media, of society, of these negative people, of these negative impulses, because we can get around it once we realize what they are.
I love that. And knowing that we can get around it is, like, to me, the biggest thing for me, because feeling, you know, said it earlier, feeling helpless, hopeless, like nothing can help me. If I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling depressed, like those are really hard places to be. And then feeling lost and not knowing how to get out is really difficult. And if you don't realize what you're doing, that becomes the last piece where it's like, I'm trying everything and it's just not working, right? Like that is the most heartbreaking comment.
It's so sad.
And then to add to everything you're saying, girl, it's so freaking powerful. The last thing that caught me off guard, which I laugh at myself now, but I'm just going to assume that people are where I have also been. I was the person that, because I didn't look at ingredients or the actual ingredients list of things, I took things as blanket statements. So if it's chicken, it means that it's good for you. If it's not, you know. So when I heard, oh, low carb is supposed to be good for you, I was like, okay, great. I love orange chicken and fried rice. I just won't eat the fried rice. So I kept eating the orange chicken, not realizing it's coated in sugar, it's deep fried, it's breaded, all of that. So it's the knowledge, the understanding, that's just my lack of knowledge. But there's another piece to it. I remember back when we started Quest Nutrition, we were doing lunch, we were buying lunch for everybody. And because we were a health company, I was like, you've got to buy something healthy. Yeah. So I was getting Subway for everyone and I was eating the chicken every day. And I remember someone going, you know, the chicken isn't healthy. And I'm like, it's chicken. How can chicken not be healthy? And then I went on their website. And you look up ingredients and you look up their chicken. Guys, ingredients to, it may have changed now. This is 15 years ago. The ingredients to chicken was something like 20 different ingredients in just chicken, grilled chicken. One of the ingredients was chicken flavoring.
Oh my God.
And in that moment, I thought, I've been eating this for 6 months, thinking and feeling good about myself, that I'm eating something that's going to fuel my body, only to recognize I'm not. And you better believe in that moment, I was like, what else have I been doing to myself? Where now you take people that are listening right now, they're feeling depressed, they're in bad moods, they're snappy, they're irritated all the time, they're overwhelmed. They don't even realize what they're doing.
You don't even know what you're doing wrong. Sometimes I tell people, I say, okay, tell me about your sleep. Tell me about your circadian rhythms. Tell me what you're eating in a day. And most people will say, oh, my sleep's not so bad. My diet's not so bad. But when you actually look, because the status quo in the modern world is that we sleep way too late, we eat way too late, we get so little sunlight, and we're eating foods that we think are relatively healthy because it says like, oh, natural flavors, organic, whatever, but they're really ultra processed. And a lot of people that I talk to, they're healthy, but they're eating, 80% ultra processed diet. And so when you say, oh, well, that could raise your anxiety and depression levels. And people are like, wait, what? I thought I was eating healthy. Just like you said, you look at that and you're like, wait, I thought I was eating like a good frozen meal, lean cuisine, whatever, all those names. And you look at the ingredients and it's like food like substances. It's not even real food. You wouldn't even call it. And so that is what messes with our brains. And even so, if anyone is watching this and saying, I feel like I could be more motivated, I could have a better mood, I could maybe turn this thing around, start to look at those things, start to look at your food and see what you're eating on a daily basis. Like, is there something that you could be doing to help those gut bacteria produce happy chemicals? Is there things you could be doing in your life to actually improve your mood yourself? Like I always talk about, like, save yourself. You are the princess on the sand waiting for someone to save you, and you are also the savior on the white horse. You're that person coming to save yourself. So once you get to that moment where that knight in shining armor, which is you, picks your old self up, that's when your life really starts.
I love that analogy. That's so awesome. Talk to me about the 3-2-1 step.
Yes.
Or the technique.
Okay. So when you are trying to retrain your brain, it's really, really difficult, right? So I talked about this intermittent reward schedule. And the intermittent reward schedule is the way that dopamine rises in your brain. So remember I told you that guy who texts you back once, but then ghosts you for a long period of time. And then you have an amazing interaction with that guy and keeps you hooked. Your dopamine levels are skyrocketing. You are craving more of that guy. So if you think about it in the positive realm, okay, I want to change myself. I want to create a new dopamine pathway. Forget that guy, I'm done. I want to do something that's going to make me better and is going to give me a dopamine rush in a positive way. So what you do is you pick 3 non-consecutive days. You are going to surprise yourself, okay, with a treat, a healthy treat. So maybe this is something like a healthy dessert. Maybe it's a positive action that you do. You go to the gym and it makes you feel good. Something that makes you feel good, okay? You do it and you reward yourself for that. Like, I'm so happy that I chose a better option. I chose to exercise. So you want 3 intermittent rewards a week. So you can either ask someone else to say, hey, just pick 3 days this week and I'm going to reward myself with a healthy treat or a healthy exercise, or you want to have an intermittent reward. And then for 2 minutes, sit down and savor it. Sit down and say, I am so glad that I made this right decision. Congratulate yourself for doing that, right? And then for 60 seconds, you literally do the action and know that it's making you feel good. So what if it's a healthy dessert, you're taking your bite and for 60 seconds, all you're doing is just loving the taste of it, loving how it's making you feel. And all of a sudden, you're creating a new neural pathway. And you keep doing this for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden, now, Lisa, instead of craving that guy who's no good for you, you are craving a healthy treat, a healthy action, a healthy food, because you created a new pathway.
That was so powerful. I love that so much. When I read that in your book, I was like, oh my God, I need techniques. I need tactics. I need ways of being able to like, okay, I don't have the pathway yet. I don't have the habit yet.
Yeah.
And so how do I, like, I'm very much, okay, be honest with myself. I don't have the habit. Okay, I understand why I want to develop this habit, or the neuro pathway. I understand what I'm trying to do, but I'm not there yet. How do I get there? That's always the thing that I struggle with. Like, give me the tips so that I can't get in my own way when I'm in that emotional moment where I'm feeling overwhelmed and now I'm just fucking going for that cake. I'm thinking, okay, no, Dr. Amy actually said, like, take a breath. When now it's actually just interrupting my current neuro pathways and giving me another way of doing things so that I can rewire it.
Yeah, like, so I wanted to drive this home for you, Lisa, and for anyone who's watching. So you remember when you celebrate yourself for doing something good. What you're telling your brain, you're giving your brain feedback that this is making me feel good. I'm doing a good thing. It's like rewiring that dopamine pathway so that it's a great celebration. Remember that people always say when you are on the path of something, say, you're trying to create a new business. When you get a milestone, a random milestone, celebrate it. Not too big. You don't want to go big. You don't want to deplete the dopamine. You don't want to be hungover the next day and say like, oh, like sometimes you celebrate so big, people celebrate so big that they actually lose the dopamine motivation. So you want to celebrate, tell your close friends, maybe just a few people, celebrate internally, not too much, not to the level where you're depleting all your dopamine, but you celebrate. And then you use that 3-2-1 technique where, when you get that random next reward, celebrate it again and savor it and spend time really congratulating yourself, because what you're doing is you're retraining. And only tell the right people about this. That's what I want to make sure I say. Dopamine is one of those things that if too many people know, they say, don't say the big thing until it happens. I would modify by saying, don't tell everyone your wins, because you want to retrain your body to keep yourself motivated for the next step, for the next thing. And when too many people know, when people are congratulating you or you're celebrating so big, how are you going to keep going to that next level if you've already depleted all your dopamine at that point?
Wow, I'd never thought about like overdoing your dopamine like that. Wow, that's fascinating.
Like they always say, like if you want to keep going in your life, you want to celebrate, but keep a little bit inside if you want to, get to that next level.
That's so not my personality. I'm just like, balls to the walls. Like, I'm going to do it. Let's celebrate all the way. But I actually totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like,
celebrate.
The hunger.
Yeah, keep a little
Not the
bit
actual,
in you.
yeah,
And you may celebrate to the point where the next day you still feel good. Some people celebrate to the point where the next day they're not motivated to go back to work.
No, I actually hear that. The funny thing is, because I'm like that just in my business actually, where it is like, oh, well, this is a stepping stone. I'm not there yet. Like, if you know where I want to go, you'll know that I've got another 30 years. So I can't celebrate as much as I want to because I know where I'm trying to go.
That's what I'm saying. Know where you're trying to go, even with happiness. Know that there's so much more out there for you. So celebrate, but know that there's even more coming.
I love that. And even the word celebrate, what you said in the book that literally caught me in my tracks, which I was like, wow, again, so simple yet so powerful. When it comes to food and when it comes to like either triggers or emotional connections, you even say like, okay, identify, does it immediately, do you think celebration or guilt?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
I know. So that is, I think, one of the most powerful things. Like, I want everyone watching, we want to celebrate. We want to eat great foods. We want to be with great people. We want to have wonderful experiences. If you want to have your alcohol, if you want to go for your Vegas trip, like these dopamine bursts it's okay. It's good. It's whatever you choose that makes you happy, but don't do it out of guilt. Ask yourself, am I really celebrating myself? Or am I going to feel guilty, and am I doing this out of some kind of negative emotion?
Yeah, that's so powerful because again, like I think we can really trip ourselves up, not deliberately meaning to, but we can. And then the other thing that was like groundbreaking for me, and I'd never heard it before, is you talking about body set. So of course, my entire show, right, is about mindset. It's about how do we like reframe our minds to be a freaking badass, to like take no shit, to stand up, to be our confident self. And then you're like, oh, and hey guys, we've got to talk about body set. I was like, that's such a beautiful way of reframing it. Puts my mind in a very different space, and then now makes me realize that that's really what I need to be doing on this show, right? It's the mind and the body set together.
Yeah, I always say that the mind and the body together are the most powerful. They're not two separate things.
Right, yeah, we want them to be, but they're not.
Yeah, and our body is just as malleable and capable, and it's completely connected. When we talk about mind-gut connection, it is really so powerful, and you have to, and I kind of, in the book, take a little bit of a contrarian view on intuitive eating, because I say, in our world, we live in a world where we are constantly bombarded by these messages that are changing our brain, that we're eating things that are lighting up the dopamine, we're doing things that are giving us a serotonin boost. And then you're asking people, hey, just, use your own signals, your hunger hormones, to decide if you want a food. And I'm like, wait, but we live in this world that has completely taken that away from us. So now we don't even know if we're hungry, we're craving, we're happy, we're sad. Like, we're just in this, our signals are so hijacked. And so I say, yes, love the idea of intuitive eating, but remember where we're living right now. We're living in a world where someone's trying to hijack your mood, your brain, your attention at all times. And so if you're just kind of, oh, well, I'm craving this. Are you really craving this? Oh, this makes me happy. But does it really make you happy? Or, or did society tell you that this makes you happy and this is what you want? So there's a lot in there that between the mindset, the body set, the intuitive eating, the real knowing the difference between cravings and hunger, I think that can help a lot of people. My biggest goal is to help people out of this horrible place that so many of us are in. Our mental health is suffering, and not only as for females, but for the entire world. And we need to have more tools to get ourselves out of this place. And I think understanding some of these tools, I hope it helped you. I think it, even learning about this and researching this, really changed how I even practice on a daily basis and help others. Reading that research and learning the facts, it's crazy.
What's the biggest thing for you then that's really, because like you've been in this space for so long, right? Like really thinking through what foods do, how they impact us, how we show up. And then I love hearing, right? Like from someone who's been such an expert that you've done so much research, what is that new thing that you feel like that you've adapted in your life? Because I really do think, right, health, everything we're talking about is evolving. Next year, you're going to come back on, you're going to have read another book, and we're going to talk about the new studies that you found. So actually, if you don't mind sharing some of the things that you've like, I found this surprising, and this is the kind of the new way of thinking, like intuitive eating, sorry to interrupt, but like intuitive eating, where it was such a big thing and everyone was following that fad, if you will, and now the way you're explaining it, it's like, oh shit, yes, if my hormones are out of whack, if I'm starving myself, and you tell me, hey Lisa, just listen to your body, my body wants Cold Stone.
Exactly.
So intuitive eating is saying, stuff your face full of sugar.
Exactly. And if you really follow the real intuitive eating, they talk about that. They said, take out all this stuff. But in real life, most people think of it as this, my intuition is telling me to drive across town and, get that dessert. So the things that really changed for me, Lisa, is I think so profound, is that mind and body is not separate. So I used to work on my mindset, my motivation, my ability to grow my business, to write books, to speak, and all that stuff. And then separately, I would work on my body. Like I would go to the gym and, I would try to eat healthy to be muscular, all that stuff. And then when I was doing all the research for this book, I'm like, wait a second. it's not two separate things. Like when I go to the gym, it's helping my mind, because when you go to the gym, the gut bacteria produce this thing called butyrate, which goes to your brain as anti-inflammatory. And then when you're doing mindset work, that's helping your gut bacteria. That's helping you get more motivated. So it was such a mind-blowing thing to me to say, oh, wait. So when you're eating healthy, when you learn your hunger hormones, when you learn the foods, you're not only making yourself healthier and fitter, but you're making yourself happier. You're making yourself a better person. You're making yourself a better leader, a better teacher, a better mother, a better friend, a better partner. And to me, I was like, oh my God, I used to think of just food as like, oh, food is for, muscles and bones. And no, food creates your personality. Food creates your mood, food creates your reality, and vice versa.
Dude, I fucking love that so much. And you really hammer that home in the book, which I love. One other thing that is so important that I think so many, especially women, do suffer with, I thought the same thing, is that, you even just said, when you exercise, it's actually really good for you, right? It's great for your gut bacteria, which then leads to great moods, etc. The problem is that a lot of people find that when they exercise, they get more hungry.
Yes.
So now they're like, what the hell am I going to do? Because I'm trying to work out to put myself in a better mood so that I start eating healthier. But what ends up happening is I just am now starving. And so I go back to going to the old bad behavior of the food that I choose.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people have this mindset that if they exercise, they'll get over hungry and then they'll choose the wrong foods. But the studies actually show that the more you exercise and move your body, the better your decisions become over the long run. So if you've ever gone, I always say never miss more than 2 days, but if you've ever gone more than 2 days with missing your workout, you'll notice that it changes so much. It changes so much of your body. I just feel like if people understand that exercise, is not necessarily just about, burning calories. It actually doesn't make you hungrier in the long run. It makes you make better decisions. It creates, like I told you, when you exercise, the gut bacteria creates a metabolite called butyrate, and which is the super metabolite of your body. It goes to your brain, it goes to your body, boosts your brain function, it improves your body's metabolism. So when you exercise, you think temporarily you'll get hungry because you did do something. But in the long term, it's going to help your hunger hormones. It's going to help make better decisions, and it's going to make you less tired.
I love it. And that's so damn powerful. Like, I didn't believe it until I started it. That's it. Like, we can talk till we're blue in the face, but the truth is, once you start, like, even if people at home right now is like, okay, I don't know if I buy into this, like, that doesn't necessarily make sense. Give it a week.
Yeah.
Give it a week.
Try it for a week and see how you feel.
Yeah.
Take control. Every single time I tell people about this information, they just feel like, wow, my mood is amazing. And my health, of course, your health is going to get better when you change your diet. But it's really how you can change your mind and your body at the same time. That's so magical.
Yeah, speaking of the mind with that, actually puts together, right, the thing that when you're doing something for yourself, it is sending yourself signals. So when you're going to the gym, it isn't just the act and the gut bacteria, right? It's the signals that you're telling yourself that you're worth it.
Yes.
Right now you're spending time on doing something just for you. And so when you do that, it starts to reinforce an idea of who you are to yourself.
Oh my God, I have to tell you a story, Lisa. So I've always loved to work out, and I've always had a career. But I grew up as a South Asian, and there's lots of stereotypes that were given to me. Oh, what are you going to cook for your family, and what are you going to do? And one day this woman looked at me and she said, "Don't you feel selfish?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, because you're spending so much time on going to the gym, working on your career, and you're not, spending as much time with your children and your family. And I said, wait a second, I never even thought of it that way, because to me, it makes me a better mother, it makes me a better partner, it makes me a better doctor, it makes me a better person. But in that moment, I felt like shame. I was like, oh my God, am I selfish because I'm doing this? And to your point, no, like it's actually telling yourself you're worth it. Your mind and body are worth it, that you are worthy of a little bit of self-care, that you're worthy. Like when I talked about those gut bacteria, they have needs and you have needs. They are very basic needs. But when you fulfill those needs, you give your body feedback that you care about it, your mind that you care about it. And so if anyone has gone through that situation, just know that that is so inaccurate and just so horrible how that carries down through the generations. I mean, this is not the 1800s. This happened to me like pretty recently.
If you want to have amazing sex, burn the belly fat, and heal your body, then click here right now. You won't want to miss it.
This is where feminism got it wrong. Rosie the River was like, we can do it. We should have put a little asterisk. We can do it
During this time of your cycle.